Hey everyone, Tommy Khan here with your FOX10 News Now update. Happy Tuesday afternoon. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Welcome back those of you who have joined us since the morning edition of News Now, and welcome those of you who are just joining us for this afternoon edition of News Now. We have an exciting afternoon ahead. I will be splitting the duties with Kinsey Schofield, who will be taking over at 3:30. In the meantime, I will be giving you today's headlines, some of today's biggest stories, and if there's any breaking news, I'll be bringing that to you right here on this stream. So let's start things off by recapping some of the events from this morning, specifically happenings at the UN. So as you know, the UN General Assembly opened yesterday, and this morning there was also a World Leaders Summit. I believe they were talking about terrorism and fighting ISIS. As far as I understand, many world leaders spoke at this event, including President Barack Obama. So I recorded that for you guys since I never showed it to you live. We're going to start things off with that, and we will continue with our extensive news coverage here on News Now.
On to some 60 nations, including our Arab partners. Together we welcome 3 new countries to our coalition: Nigeria, Tunisia, and Malaysia. Nearly 24 nations are in some way contributing to the military campaign, and we salute and are grateful for all the service members from our respective nations who are performing with skill and determination. In Iraq, ISIL continues to hold Mosul, Fallujah, and Ramadi. But Iraqi forces, backed by coalition air power, have liberated towns across Kirkuk province and Tikrit. ISIL has now lost nearly a third of the populated areas in Iraq that it had controlled. 18 countries are now helping to train and support Iraqi forces, including Sunni volunteers who want to push ISIL out of their communities. And Prime Minister Abadi, I want to note the enormous sacrifices being made by Iraqi forces and the Iraqi people in this fight every day. In Syria, which has obviously been a topic of significant discussion during the course of this General Assembly, we have seen support from Turkey that has allowed us to intensify our air campaign there. ISIL has been pushed back from large sections of northeastern Syria, including the key city of Tal Abyad, putting new pressure on its stronghold of Raqqa. And ISIL has been cut off from almost the entire region bordering Turkey, which is a critical step towards stemming the flow of foreign terrorist fighters. Following the Special Security Council meeting I chaired last year, more than 20 additional countries have passed or strengthened laws to disrupt the flow of foreign terrorist fighters. We share more information, and we are strengthening border controls. We've prevented would-be fighters from reaching the battlefield and returning to threaten our countries. But this remains a very difficult challenge, and today we're going to focus on how we can do more together. In conjunction with this summit, the United States and our partners are also taking new steps to crack down on the illicit finance that ISIL uses to pay its fighters, fund its operations, and launch attacks. Our military and intelligence efforts are not going to succeed alone. They have to be matched by political and economic progress to address the conditions that ISIL has exploited in order to take root. Prime Minister Abadi is taking important steps to build a more inclusive and accountable government while working to stabilize areas taken back from ISIL, and our nations need to help Prime Minister Abadi in these efforts. In Syria, as I said yesterday, defeating ISIL requires, I believe, a new leader and an inclusive government that unites the Syrian people in the fight against terrorist groups. This is going to be a complex process, and as I've said before, we are prepared to work with all countries, including Russia and Iran, to find a political mechanism in which it is possible to begin a transition process. As ISIL's tentacles reach into other regions, the United States is increasing our counterterrorism cooperation with partners like Tunisia. We're boosting our support to Nigeria and its neighbors as they push back against Boko Haram, which has pledged allegiance to ISIL. And we're creating a new clearinghouse to better coordinate the world's support for countries counterterrorism programs so that our efforts are as effective as possible. Ultimately, however, it is not going to be enough to defeat ISIL in the battlefield. We have to prevent it from radicalizing, recruiting, and inspiring others to violence in the first place. And this means defeating their ideology. Ideologies are not defeated with guns, they're defeated by better ideas, a more attractive and compelling vision. Building on our White House summit earlier this year and summits around the world since then, we're moving ahead together in several areas. We're stepping up our efforts to discredit ISIL's propaganda, especially online. The UAE's new messaging hub, the Sawab Center, is exposing ISIL for what it is, which is a band of terrorists that kills innocent Muslim men, women, and children. We're working to lift up the voices of Muslim scholars, clerics, and others, including ISIL defectors, who courageously stand up to ISIL and its warped interpretations of Islam. We recognize that we have to confront the economic grievances that exist in some of the areas that ISIL seeks to exploit. Poverty does not cause terrorism, but as we've seen across the Middle East and North Africa, when people, especially young people, are impoverished and hopeless and feel humiliated by injustice and corruption, that can fuel resentments that terrorists exploit, which is why sustainable development, creating opportunity and dignity, particularly for youth, is part of countering violent extremism. We recognize we also have to address the political grievances that ISIL exploits. I've said this before, when human rights are denied and citizens have no opportunity to redress their grievances peacefully, it feeds terrorist propaganda that justifies violence. Likewise, when political opponents are treated like terrorists and thrown in jail, it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the real path to lasting stability and progress is not less democracy. I believe it is more democracy in terms of free speech and freedom of religion, rule of law, strong civil societies. All that has to play a part in countering violent extremism. And finally, we recognize that our best partners in protecting vulnerable people from succumbing to violent extremist ideologies are the communities themselves. Families, friends, neighbors, clerics, faith leaders who love and care for these young people. Remember that violent extremism is not unique to any one faith, so no one should be profiled or targeted simply because of their faith. Yet, we have to recognize that ISIL is targeting Muslim communities around the world, especially individuals who may be disillusioned or confused or wrestling with their identities. And in all of our countries, we have to continue to build true partnerships with Muslim communities based on trust and cooperation so that they can help protect their loved ones from becoming radicalized. And this cannot just be the work of government. It is up to all of us. We have to commit ourselves to build diverse, tolerant, inclusive societies that reject anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant bigotry that creates the divisions, the fear, and the resentments upon which extremists can prey. I'm pleased that here at this summit, businesses, including high-tech companies, are investing funds, training, and technological expertise to support innovative programs that push back on violent extremism. Cities around the world are joining together to build more resilient communities. Researchers are partnering to share best practices, knowing what works and what we can do better. And as we saw yesterday, young people from around the world are participating in their own summit. And these young people, many of them Muslim, are coming together and using their talents and technology to push back on ISIL's propaganda, especially online, and to protect their brothers and sisters from recruitment. These young people are an inspiration and give us hope. And I'd ask everyone to join me in thanking all the young people who are here today. So, to conclude, we face a grave challenge. We have to be clear-eyed about the fact that this is very hard work. We have individuals here like Prime Minister Abadi and President Buhari who are on the front lines. This is not going to be turned around overnight because it is not just a military campaign that we are involved in. There are profound changes taking place in the Middle East and North Africa. There are problems that have built up over decades that are expressing themselves and manifesting themselves in organizations like ISIL. Even if we were to wipe out the entire cadre of ISIL leadership, we would still have some of these forces at work. But ultimately, I am optimistic. In Iraq and in Syria, ISIL is surrounded by communities, countries, and a broad international coalition committed to its destruction. We've seen that ISIL can be defeated on the battlefield, where there is sound organization and a government and military that is coordinating with this coalition and with our diplomatic efforts. And here at this summit, we're seeing a new global movement to counter the violent extremism that ISIL needs to survive. Like terrorists and tyrants throughout history, ISIL will eventually lose because it has nothing to offer but suffering and death. And when you look at the reports of those who are laboring under their control, it is a stark and brutal life that does not appeal to people over the long term. So we will ultimately prevail because we are guided by a stronger, better vision, a commitment to the security, opportunity, and dignity of every human being. But it will require diligence, focus, and sustained effort by all of us. And I am grateful that all of you who are already participating are committed to this work. With that, I want to give the floor to our Secretary General, His Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon.
Thank you, Your Excellency President Obama, for your strong leadership and very inspiring and visionary statement today. And I'd like to also thank you for hosting this very important Leaders Summit this morning after a very successful and meaningful White House Summit meeting on countering violent extremism in February in Washington, D.C. Since then, this process has sparked serious conversations around the world to address the menace at its roots. Violent extremist groups, including Daesh and Boko Haram, pose a direct threat to international security, mercilessly target women and girls, and undermine universal values of peace, justice, and human dignity. That threat is growing. Our most recent data shows a 70% of increase in foreign terrorist fighters from over 100 countries to regions in conflict. Addressing this challenge goes to the heart of the mission of the United Nations, and it requires a unified response. We know violent extremism flourishes when human rights are violated, aspirations for inclusion are ignored, and too many people, especially the world's young people, with their hopes and dreams, lack prospect and meaning in their lives. We also know the crucial ingredients for success: good governance, the rule of law, open pluralist societies, quality education, and decent jobs, full respect for human rights. Security-focused counterterrorism measures are crucial. Yet we can no longer have such efforts backfire by playing into the hands of those we are seeking to defeat, or by further alienating already marginalized groups or communities. The United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy, the Security Council Resolution 2178, provides tools for addressing the scourge of violent extremism, including the growing flow of thousands of foreign terrorist fighters. The newly adopted Sustainable Development Goals also echo the voices of people and critically include a goal of peace, justice, and strong institutions. Our objective must be to go beyond the countering violent extremism to preventing it in the first place. On the basis of an emerging international consensus, I intend to present a comprehensive plan of action to prevent violent extremism early next year to the General Assembly. I hope that each and every member state who are participating in this would closely coordinate to share your experience and your vision, how we can work together to combat and fight this extremism. And we most welcome your suggestions. This plan, which is firmly based on the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy, will provide specific recommendations to member states on individual and collective actions to systematically address the drivers of violent extremism at every level. It will also put forward recommendations on how the UN system can support member states to prevent violent extremism through an all-of-UN approach covering the many dimensions of our work. Let me briefly highlight 5 keys to success. First, governments cannot do it alone. We need to engage all of society, religious leaders, women leaders, leaders in the arts, music, and sports. Second, we need to make a special effort to reach young people where they live, share ideas, and communicate. Social media is central. We need to offer a counterweight to the siren songs that promise adventure but deliver horror, and that promise a meaning but create more misery. Third, leaders must work harder to build truly accountable institutions. I continue to urge leaders to listen very carefully to the grievances and aspirations of their people and address them. Fourth, and fundamentally, we must be guided by the moral compass of our common values. Respect for international law and human rights is non-negotiable. Without it, we are lost. Fifth, and finally, let us not be ruled by fear or provoked by those who strive to exploit it. We have a major challenge before us, one that will not disappear overnight, but one that we can address concretely by forging societies of inclusion, ensuring lives of dignity, and pursuing this essential endeavor inspired at all times by the United Nations Charter and Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I thank you, and thank you for your commitment. Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Haider al-Abadi, Prime Minister of the Republic of Iraq.
السيد الرئيس أوباما، سيد بان كيمون الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة، السادة قادة العالم وشعوبهم، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Peace may be upon you, and it has been over 1 year since ISIS controlled Iraq, and what it has caused of tragedies and atrocities for civilians and belongings. During this day, there has been a universal alliance, and there are a lot of friends, states who stood with us, and we're thankful to whoever stood with us against this unified enemy, which is not only a threat to us, but for the whole world. Today, it has been 1 year since I have been over this government that was the product of free elections. This development
development that we have established last year, we need to get the profits from during this year and during this coming months, and we can do it by unifying our forces. In order to know our stance and our approach, we need first to remember where we have been during last year before forming this government, and what we inherited from a country that is living a crisis, in which crisis was occupying more than 30% of the region, and our military forces was in a very dangerous position, and there was the oldest culture in the world that was threatened by the occupation of ISIS, which is by occupying Iraq. There were in the internal front, there was a lot of sectarian wars, and the government was very weak at that point. We had crisis that was financial and bureaucracy, heavy bureaucracy in the country, and a lot of unemployed people. We have worked hard in order to reunify our country against and rebuilding our forces and regaining our connection with the world, and building also the tribal communities and their leaders, including Anbar, Salahuddin, and Musil, who are under threat of ISIS. A lot of the tribes' sons are fighting by the government military forces, and we are eradicating the roots of corruption in civil associations, after we have recused a lot of officials in different governments, and we provided more than 80,000 personnel who are fighting Daesh with salaries, also for fighting ISIS, and we also have cancelled what is more than 50,000 of what is called the elusive soldiers who were just receiving salaries without really doing any work. This way we got our budget rid of the burden. We're also getting rid of honor posts and reducing Iraq's dependence on oil income. During this, we're trying to benefit from the reduction of the oil. We are trying to unify all the government and the community around it. And our government is seeking forming local fighters who are fighting together against terrorism, and because ISIS is threatening the whole area, we are working on reinforcing our connection or relationship, including Saudi Iran and Saudi Arabia, and all the regions of the area generally. We're also making reforms in the area and in the diplomatic front, and we are acquiring ودول صديقة during the last year we have freed Amerli and Marwana and Jurf al-Sakhr and Zumar and Beji and Juwala and Saudiya and Duluya and Tikrit and Dur and Alam and Hashash and a lot of other regions. And in freeing Tikrit, we involved the security forces of Iraqi and the tribal forces and the community forces also. Tens of thousands of Iraqi people are now back in Tikrit. About 80% who flee, who had fleeing before we came. They came back after a lot of assistance who provided aid to Iraqi through directly or indirectly.
بالرغم من مخاوف كثيرين بهذا الشأن فإن حالات الانتقامات كانت ضئيلة جدا بالمقارنة مع حوزة الحياة الطبيعية على نحو متزايد خصوصا مع ملاحظة العنف الذي شنه داعش عندما كان يحتل هذه المناطق ضد جميع السكان وضد الأقليات وقيامهم بجرائم عشائر محددة مقابل عشائر أخرى ولهذا شاهدنا أن عمليات الانتقام الحمد لله كانت أقل بكثير مما كان يتوقع الكثيرون لذا يمكننا أن نحصد انتصارات في كل المناطق على نحو مماثل لما حصل في تكريت ولكننا نحتاج إلى مساعدة المجتمع الدولي ومساعدة الاتحاد الدولي ومساعدة جميع جيراننا ومع حقيقة سيطرة الإرهابيين على مناطق كثيرة من بلدنا وبالتزامن مع هبوط أسعار النفط ونزوح ملايين العراقيين لحد الآن لدينا ما يزيد على 3 ملايين نازح عراقي داخل العراق وميزانية محدودة جدا في ظل أوقات الحرب بالمقارنة مع ما أنفقته الحكومات السابقة في وقت السلم فلا يمكننا تمويل المعارك التي يسعى جنودنا إلى تحقيقها وتحقيق النصر فيها بشكل لائق. نحن بحاجة إلى مساعدتكم ومساعدة المجتمع الدولي في التمويل وتجهيز المعدات لجنودنا في ساحات الوضع كما نحتاج دعمكم أيضا في أن نضمد جراحات الشعب وأن نرعى أرامل وأيتام من فقدوا في المعركة وتوفير الخدمات اللائقة بهم. نحن نحتاج إلى مساعدتكم في تجفيف منابع الإرهابيين الفكر المتطرف الذي يأتي من كل مكان وهؤلاء الإرهابيون الذين يأتون من مختلف دول العالم يأتون من أوروبا
places in the world, and they're coming from the North of America, they're coming from Islamic and Arabic countries too. We need to work with our neighboring countries to stop the foreign terrorist fighters who are killing civilians in Iraq and Saudi Arabia, and then go back to their countries where they come from after they have done a lot of terrorist actions. We want you to stop the terrorists from financing the money through international financial networks that are being used now to finance those terrorists. We are demanding to suspend it under the light of the resolution of the Council. We want you to help us stop them from enslaving women and men and stealing the artifacts. And because those people who have been, whose hearts have been filled with hatred, we need to adopt the treatment of the reasons of those problems, economic and political. We have started on doing that up till now, uprooting this basic reason that causes people to be directed towards radicalization and violence and terrorism. We have provided different kinds of sacrifices, and our people are still sacrificing their lives for this purpose. We need not to lose focus and not to lose time in enforcing our gathering our forces against ISIS, and do not forget that the time is a big element. Together you have stopped, and we have stopped the march of the terrorists. Together we will gain a victory that is not only the victory of the Iraqis, but it is a victory for all the representing countries in every country that has contributed with us in fighting the terrorism. Thank you, and for all that we have done and all that we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Abadi, for your statement and for the work you're doing under very challenging circumstances to address this issue in your country. I want to next give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Muhammadu Buhari, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Mr. Chairman, Your
سيد
Excellencies,
الرئيس أصحاب
Ladies and
السيادة
gentlemen,
سيداتي
I thank President
سادتي
Obama for organizing this
شكرا
important
للرئيس
meeting.
أوباما على عقد هذا
The
الاجتماع
timing is
الهام.
appropriate and the subject matter warrants our close attention. The threats posed by ISIL in the Middle East and violent extremism elsewhere are an existential danger to many states. ISIL is a serious threat to international peace and security and should be treated as such. There can be no half measures of expedient solutions in dealing with terrorists and extremists. They respect no laws and have no regard to the sanctity of lives and property. They operate outside law and must be seen for what they are and dealt with appropriately. Given that the acceptance process for recruits into ranks of ISIL involves rigorous vetting and screening, as well as sponsorship known as tazkiyah, our expectation was that the demanding enlistment process, coupled with the legal framework instituted by the United Nations, would stem the tide of their flow. Apparently, this is not yet happening. Mr. Chairman,
Our coalition has grown to some 60 nations, including our Arab partners. Together, we welcome 3 new countries to our coalition.
President of the Republic of Argentina, and to invite her to address the Assembly.
Muchas gracias,
Thank you very much,
señor presidente
Mr.
de la
President
Asamblea,
of the General
señores
Assembly,
miembros de esta honorable Asamblea.
members of this Honorable Assembly.
Permítanme, en primer lugar,
Allow me at the outset
agradecer un hecho que
to welcome
fue muy relevante
a fact that
y que tuvo lugar en este
an
mismo
event that was
ámbito
very relevant and took place in this very
hace pocos días,
room
para
a
ser
few
más
days
exactos,
ago, and to be more
el
precise,
10 de septiembre de este año, cuando
in
la
September this
Asamblea,
year, when the General
por
Assembly,
136 votos positivos,
by 136
decidió
votes in
aprobar
favor,
los
decided
principios
to approve
rectores, los principios
the
básicos
basic
para la
guidelines
reestructuración
for the
de las deudas
restructuring
externas
of
de los
external
países.
debt of countries.
Este ha sido un triunfo muy importante.
This was a very significant triumph.
Se han consagrado 9 principios.
It established new
Los
principles
tengo aquí anotados para no olvidarme de ninguno de ellos, que son los que deben regir
These are the ones that should
el tratamiento y
guide
la
the way
resolución
we deal with and
cuando
resolve
se decide renegociar
when we talk about
por parte de un país
renegotiating on the part of a
su
given
deuda
country
externa.
its
Soberanía.
external debt.
la soberanía de un país
The
para
sovereignty
decidir
of
su
a
política
country to decide
macroeconómica
its own
y también
macroeconomic policy
para decidir cómo va a
and to
reestructurar
decide
esa
how
deuda.
it will restructure
fe,
its debt.
La transparencia, la
Good faith,
imparcialidad,
transparency,
el
impartiality,
trato equitativo
equitable treatment,
para no distinguir entre los distintos
so that we don't
acreedores y que
distinguish
todos
between two
sean
different players,
tratados
and
de
so
la misma
everybody
forma.
be treated on a level
La
playing
inmunidad
ground.
soberana de jurisdicción
The
y
sovereignty in
ejecución,
terms of jurisdiction and implementation,
legitimidad,
the legitimacy,
la sostenibilidad,
the very sustainability,
tal vez uno de los principios más
some of the, perhaps
importantes,
the most important of the
porque habla
principles,
de
because this
pagar
refers to
la deuda
paying
y
the
honrar las
debt
deudas,
and respect
pero
one's
no a
debt,
costa del
but
hambre y
not
la
at
miseria
the
del
cost
pueblo,
of the
sino a
hunger
través
and misery of our own
de un
peoples,
proyecto
but
político
through
y
a political
económico
and economic
y de
project
variables macroeconómicas que hagan sustentable
on the basis of a
el desarrollo y
sustainable
el crecimiento
macroeconomy
de
which
una
makes it
sociedad. Y
possible to
finalmente,
develop our societies. And
tal vez el
finally,
principio
and perhaps
más
the
importante
most
que hoy está faltando
important
en materia de
principle which was
regulación
lacking in terms of
para deuda
regulation
soberana
for sovereign debt.
y que es un
And
principio de
that
lógica que
is
se
a
aplica
logical principle which
en
applies
todos
in
los ordenamientos
all
jurídicos internos
internal
de casi
legal
todos los países del mundo.
regulations throughout the world.
Cuando una empresa quiebra,
When a company
Cuando
goes
una empresa
bankrupt, when a
no puede
company
pagar sus deudas
cannot
en
pay its
cualquier
own
país,
debt in any
inclusive en
country,
este,
and including in this
en
one,
Estados
in
Unidos,
the
donde
United
también
States
está
of America,
admitida la quiebra de los municipios,
And also where there is
¿cómo se
the
logra el
bankruptcy of
consenso
municipalities, how is consensus reached?
arribando a una mayoría
How do we
calificada?
reach
Cuando el
a
66%
qualified
de los
majority when
acreedores
76% of the creditors
aquí en Estados
here
Unidos,
in the
también en mi
United
país,
States and also in
la
my own
República
country,
Argentina,
the Republic of Argentina,
acuerdan
when they come to an
con el
agreement
deudor
with the
forma y
debtor,
plazos
they establish
de pago,
timetables for the
esto se
payment,
convierte en
and
ley
this becomes part of
y
the
es
law,
obligatorio
and it's
para el
mandatory
resto de
for
los acreedores.
the other
66%,
creditors. When
vuelvo a
76%
repetir.
agree, let
Aquí
me
este
repeat that once
principio
again.
consagra también
This principle is
que
also
cuando las mayorías
enshrined
deciden
when the majority do
una forma
decide,
de pago,
one form
esta
of
debe
payment,
ser aceptada por el resto.
then it
Esto
is
tiene
applies to everybody else.
acuerdo,
Now this
este
agreement,
principio, estos
this
convenios
principle, these
que se han
conventions
aprobado aquí
have been approved
y que
here,
nosotros hemos decidido
and we have
enviar
decided
a nuestro Parlamento
to
para
submit to our Parliament
hacerlo un instrumento de
to
orden
make
público, una ley
it
de orden pública que rige el
an instrument
ordenamiento
of
interno
public
de
order
nuestro
which
país,
controls internal
tuvo su
domestic
origen
practices,
en
and it
el
was
default
based on
que la
the
Argentina
default that Argentina
tuvo en el año 2000, el
experienced
default
in
más grande
2000.
soberano de la historia.
This was the major
El mundo
sovereign debt
en ese
issue.
momento
The
crecía
world
a
at
tasas
that time was growing at
más que
rates
buenas.
above
Sin embargo, la Argentina
good
quebró
rates, but Argentina,
producto de un endeudamiento
because of its debt,
que venía
went bankrupt, and this
tiempo
debt
atrás. Para ser
came
más
from
precisos, comenzó
previous times. In
con
fact, to be
mucha fuerza
precise,
en
it began
1976, cuando se quebró el orden
in
constitucional,
76
cuando hubo
when
un
the
golpe de
constitutional
Estado y
order was
comenzó a
overthrown and there was a
profundizarse
coup
inclusive
d'etat.
durante la década de los
And
90
this carried
con
on
el régimen
during
de
the
la convertibilidad,
90s with the
donde nos
convertibility
hicieron creer a los
regime.
argentinos que un peso valía $1.
Then a peso, an
Esto
Argentine peso,
finalmente culminó
was worth
en el default
$1. And this led
año
to
2001,
the
y
2001
también en el
default
quiebre de la institucionalidad.
and the bankruptcy of
En
the
una semana hubo
institutionality.
5 gobiernos.
In 1 week, there were 5 different
Argentina
governments,
pudo
but
reconstruir
Argentina was able to rebuild itself,
Su economía, su
rebuild its
sociedad,
economy, its society,
cuando la política
when
volvió a tomar
the
el comando de la economía
politics took
a partir
control
del
of the
25 de
economy.
mayo del año 2003.
And this was as of the 25th of May
Cuando la política
2003,
retoma el comando
when
de la
the
economía
politicians retook
y
control of the
entonces se decide
economy,
convocar
and they decided to
a los
convene
acreedores
or to
en
bring
una primera
together all the
reestructuración en el año
creditors
2005
in 2005,
y otra en el año
and then there was a further
2010,
in,
ya durante mi
in
presidencia.
2010
La primera
under my
fue
presidency, and
durante la
the first
presidencia
one was during the
del
presidency
doctor Néstor Carlos
of
Kirchner, que en
Dr.
esta misma asamblea
Nestor Kirchner, who in this very
en su primer
General
discurso
Assembly,
dijo que
here
los
in his
muertos no
first
pagan las
speech
deudas,
said that the dead cannot
y que era
pay
necesario
debts, and that it was
los
necessary.
acreedores
It was necessary for the
permitieran que
creditors
Argentina
to allow
creciera
Argentina to grow,
para poder pagar.
to be able to pay.
No fue una premonición,
Now, this was not a premonition
no
of any
fue que
kind.
adivinó el futuro,
It was not that he
simplemente
saw
aplicó la
the future.
lógica
He simply
económica
applied economic
de que es
logic.
imposible
That it is
pagar
impossible
una
to
deuda
pay a debt
si no tiene crecimiento la
if there is
economía
not economic
del
growth
país
in the
deudor. Y
country,
allí
the debtor
comenzó
country. And that's how it began.
Argentina
Argentina
su inexorable proceso
began
de
its
desendeudamiento que tuvo que ver también cuando en el
progress, which
2005
it was also related to what happened in
decidió pagar la
2005 when it was
totalidad de la
decided to
deuda
pay
del
off the
Fondo
total of the
Monetario
debt
Internacional,
to the IMF,
que imponía las
which was
políticas macroeconómicas
imposing the
en
macroeconomic
nuestro país. A
policies
partir
on
de
our
allí,
countries. And as of then,
la Argentina comienza a
Argentina
crecer
began to grow.
y se engancha como un vagón
And
más en la locomotora de los
it
países
added
emergentes
it was an additional
que eran los que
element on
venían
the train
sosteniendo
of
el
the developing
crecimiento
countries
sostenido
moving towards sustainable development
de la economía
of the
internacional. No nos
international
olvidemos,
economy. We'll never forget.
no nos olvidemos que el
We
mayor
do not forget
crecimiento
that the greatest
lo
growth
protagonizaron precisamente
took
los países
took
emergentes
place
encabezados
amongst the
fundamentalmente por
emerging
los gigantes
countries,
asiáticos.
particularly led by the
Me
Asian
tocó a mí,
Pacific countries. And it was up to me
en mi
then,
primera
during
intervención
my
como
first
presidenta de la República
intervention
Argentina
as
en este
president
mismo
of the
ámbito,
Republic of Argentina in the same
en el año
area. This was
2008,
in
en septiembre del
2008, in the
2008,
September of 2008,
ver cómo
to
ese tren
see how this
que
locomotive,
venía
which
arrastrando al
which
mundo
was
en un
dragging
crecimiento sostenido,
the world forward to sustain growth,
se le puso otra locomotora en la
was
punta. ¿Vieron esos
added,
trenes viejos que
another
tienen dos
engine was
locomotoras?
added to it. There are
En
trains
una
with
punta,
2 locomotives, 2 engines.
China y el resto
We
de los
had
países emergentes
China, the
tirando para el
emerging
crecimiento con
countries,
tasas
with
que
high
el
rates
año
of growth.
2007,
In
en el caso de China
2007, in the case of China, these
14
economic growth
puntos de
was
crecimiento del PBI.
14%
Y en
GDP
el año
growth.
2008 explotó
And
aquí
2008,
en Wall Street con la caída de
we
Lehman
had
Brothers
the fall
una
of
crisis
Lehman Brothers and Wall
económica
Street,
que
which led
aún
to an economic crisis, which still
estamos viviendo, pero
we are experiencing,
con varias modificaciones,
but with some differences,
porque la crisis empezó
because the
aquí,
crisis began
en
here,
el corazón de las
in the
finanzas
very
mundiales.
heart of international
Se
finance.
venía pronunciando con la
And
crisis de la
it
subprime
began with
en
the
el
subprime
2007.
crisis in 2007,
explota en
and
el
finally
2008.
it all blew up in 2008.
2009
2009
Es el año de la
was
caída
the year of
mundial de la economía,
the
salvo
global
la de los países
collapse of the
asiáticos.
economy,
Hasta en
but
Latinoamérica
except Asian countries, and include Latin America.
decrecimos en ese año 2009.
Our growth rate was negative
En
in
el año
2009. In 2010,
Se transfiere la crisis a la zona del euro y se va
the crisis
al rescate,
extended to the
lo llamó
zone,
así,
the
rescate de los
eurozone.
países endeudados. En realidad,
And then there was the
todos sabemos
dealing
que
with the
es un
debtor
eufemismo.
countries. We know that this
Lo
is
que
a
se fueron a
euphemism
rescatar
when we talk
fueron
about
los
saving
bancos.
the debtor countries. What we're talking about is
Miles
saving
de
the banks.
millones de dólares
Billions of
se
dollars
transfirieron
were
a las
transferred
entidades bancarias.
to
Aún recuerdo
banking entities
una discusión
based on
en el
a
G20 en Londres, en el
discussion
segundo G20,
in the G20 in London,
donde nosotros sosteníamos que era
when
necesario,
we
sí,
said it was
salvar a los
necessary.
bancos para no
Yes,
caer en una
do,
depresión como la de
do save
1930, pero
the
que era
banks so that we don't have a
necesario,
repetition of the 1930 depression.
imprescindible
But it was
regulación
absolutely essential to have
que
regulation
permitiera que esa
to allow
marea de recursos
this flooding of
que se
this flood of
inyectaban
resources which was being
a los sectores
injected
financieros
into the financial sector
volvieran
should come
a
back
la economía
to
real
the real economy,
para entrar al circuito de la producción
to
de
enter
bienes y
into the
servicios y
circuit of
comenzar a dar
producing
vueltas
services
nuevamente en la
and
rueda del
goods,
crecimiento.
and so there'd be a new
Nada
round
de
of
eso se
growth.
hizo, al
But
contrario.
nothing like this was done. Indeed,
La
on the
contraprestación
contrary,
al rescate de
on
países
the saving
fue
of countries, in
política
fact, was
de
a
ajuste.
policy
Y la
of
política
just
de ajuste
fine-tuning and adjustment,
que se le impuso a la zona
which
del euro
was for the, in
provocó
the
la recesión
Eurozone,
de esta
in
zona
fact, led to a
y
recession
la
in that
caída del
zone
empleo
and a drop
a
in
niveles
employment
históricos
to
nunca
historically
antes vistos. En
levels which
Italia,
had never been
25%
seen.
de los
Italy,
jóvenes,
25% of the young
50%
people or
de los jóvenes
50% of the young
desempleados.
people
En
were
España
unemployed. In
también.
Spain also,
Desempleo de 2 dígitos.
two-digit
Y
unemployment.
llegamos así al 2014
And then
y 2015 con
2014
una
and
caída fuerte de la
2015 with
demanda
a
mundial. Y
strong drop
entonces
in global demand.
vemos cómo el
And so we
tren,
see how this
de la crisis,
locomotive of the
esa
crisis
locomotora de Lehman Brothers que
and
arrancó
the
acá
Lehman Brothers,
en el corazón de Wall
which
Street,
collapsed here in the heart of
pasó después
Wall
a
Street,
Europa.
it then infected Europe,
ahora
and now
intenta ser trasladada
it's trying
precisamente a las
to be
economías
extended
emergentes
to the emerging
que fuimos
economies
las
as
que
well.
hemos
We
sostenido
were the ones who were
durante tanto
sustained
tiempo el
over
crecimiento
so
de la
many
economía.
years. We were
Argentina formó
sustaining
parte
through
y
our own
forma
growth.
parte de ese
Argentina was
crecimiento
part
este
of
año,
this growth this
pese a las
year,
dificultades,
despite all the difficulties,
pese al
despite
hostigamiento de los fondos buitres
the vulture funds
que no cobran, pero tampoco
do
dejan que lo hagan el
do not
92,7% de quienes acordaron las dos reestructuraciones.
the restructuring of the debt on base
Con la
of 2.7%, and doing this with the
cierto
complicity
sector
of some
judicial de este país,
juridical institutions in this body. They are claiming
que le pagáramos
that they're demanding
al
that we should pay
7%
on 7%,
20 mil millones de dólares,
$20 billion,
cuando la reestructuración
when the
al
restructuring
92%
for
había sido de 40
92%
mil millones de dólares.
for
¿Qué lógica
40
capitalista,
billion.
qué
What
lógica
is this capitalist
matemática
logic?
tiene
This,
esto? ¿Cuánto
what sort of
duraría
mathematical logic can this have? And how
la
long
reestructuración del
will the restructuring
93%
of the
si accediéramos a las demandas de estos
93%, if we
verdaderos
meet
depredadores
the demands
financieros,
of these predatory finances,
pagándoles a
paying
ellos
them,
solamente el
them
7%,
7%,
la mitad
the half,
de lo que se le pagó al 92%. Seguramente
the half of this
encontrarían algún juez
22%. So no,
con más lógica que diría, no, está muy mal.
any logical judge would
No se
say,
le
no, this
puede
is not
pagar
right.
al 7%
They can't
la mitad de
pay
lo
at
que se ha pagado
7% the
al
half of what they
92%.
paid at
Máxime aún
90%. even
cuando algunos de
particularly
ese
when
7%
some of the
compraron
7%
muchos de esos
were
bonos cuando ya
bought
Argentina
by these bonds
había
these bonds
defaulteado
when
su deuda
Argentina had
externa. Por
defaulted
eso,
on its external debt. For that reason,
esta aprobación
the
de los principios básicos para la
approval of these
recuperación de la
basic
deuda
principles
externa
for
del
the
país, de las
restructuring of a
deudas
country's
soberanas,
external debt, its sovereign
que
debt,
también ya tiene
which
antecedentes
also have
con leyes antibuitre, por ejemplo, en el Reino de
relationship
Bélgica,
with anti-vulture fund laws, perhaps, for example, in
no una
Belgium,
ayuda a la
does
Argentina,
not mean assistance to
que está
Argentina,
depositando el
which is
100% de lo
depositing
adeudado
7%
a
of
sus acreedores.
of its debt to its
Es una ayuda para el
creditors.
resto del mundo.
This is, in fact, assistance to the rest of the
intento,
world.
el
It's an
primer
attempt, it's
intento
the
serio
very first serious
de poner
attempt
razonabilidad
to
y
introduce
regulación
reason and
a un
regulation
sector
in a sector,
como es el sector financiero y de
which
los
is the
derivados,
financial sector and the
que a partir de
derivatives,
la transformación de
which
bancos
from the
comerciales
transformation
en
of
bancos de
commercial
inversión
banks,
no ha
making them
tenido ningún
inversion banks,
tipo
since then,
de intervención.
there has been no
ni de
intervention
controlador.
nor control in their
Por eso decimos
activities. That's the reason why
Esto
we
que se ha aprobado el
say
10 de septiembre
that
constituye
in
un
September,
avance
what was agreed
importantísimo
was a very
que
significant
debe
and
ser
major step
consecuente,
forward,
además,
and it should be
porque el mundo,
followed up upon,
señoras y
because
señores,
the
y no hace
world,
falta que se
ladies
lo
and
diga yo,
gentlemen,
no está nada bien.
nothing's
Podríamos hablar
good
de la crisis de
in
los
the world.
refugiados,
We can talk about the refugee
producto de los
crisis,
depredadores
which is the
financieros
result of the financial
en los
predators
países que no
in the
alcanzan
countries
a sostener a su gente
which
y
are not
emigran
able to
hacia
help
Europa en
their
balsas, en
countries,
canoas desde el
and
África,
therefore they go in
o los
dinghies from
refugiados,
Africa
producto
to
de los señores de
Europe,
la guerra.
refugees from war.
Pero yo quiero hablarles también de
I
un
wish
proceso de
also to talk
concentración
about
económica
a process
inédita
of
en el
economic
mundo.
concentration which is unheard of in the
Según el
world.
último informe del
According to
Fondo
the most
Monetario
recent
Internacional,
IMF
el
report,
1% de la población
1% of
concentra
the
hoy
global
el
population holds
50% de la riqueza.
50% of the wealth.
Aquí mismo, en este
Here,
país,
in this very country where we
que
are,
supo protagonizar
which was
el
able
sueño
to
americano, el sueño de las clases
promote
medias
the American
americanas, que
dream, the
empujaba
middle
tanto
class of
a los
America,
americanos y sigue empujando
which
todavía
attracted
a
so
venir
many Americans, has attracted so many people
Aquí,
to
un
come
1%
here.
tiene más del
1% have more
del
than
total de la riqueza.
30% of
¿Cuánto
all the
tiempo
wealth. How long?
puede sostenerse
How
una
long can
sociedad,
such a society
un
keep on
mundo,
going? How can a
con
world
este grado de
continue
inequidad
which has
en
such
materia de
inequality
distribución del ingreso,
in
con
terms
todo
of
lo que ello
inclusion
conlleva?
and
Ayer
income,
decíamos,
in terms of all that this brings with
en el
it?
encuentro
We
de
saw
igualdad de
this
género
yesterday
promovido por
in
el
the
presidente Xi Jinping.
in President Xi
igualdad de
Jinping's
género podemos
meeting.
hablar en un mundo donde
How can we talk
la
about
distribución de los
gender
recursos
empowerment
es tan
when the resources are so
¿De qué igualdad de
inequitably
género podemos hablar en un mundo donde se expulsan a la gente
distributed,
de sus
and when
países
we
porque no puede vivir y
expel
tampoco
people
se la
from their
recibe
countries,
a donde quieren ir?
and when they cannot be received in other countries,
Estamos
when
ante
they
una
are refused
situación
entry into other countries? So in the
en la
face of this
que
situation,
debemos abordar
this is a situation which we
la
need to face up
problemática
to. We need
de
to
los
address the
mercados
problem of the
financieros y la
financial
necesidad de
markets
volver a
and the
inyectar
need to
recursos en la
inject
economía real para que
resources
vuelva
into the
el
real
empleo,
economy so that we
para
get
que
jobs
vuelva la
once
producción
again, so that we have
como los
production
grandes
again
motores generadores
as the main engines,
del
the great
bienestar
engines of the
de las
well-being
sociedades.
of societies.
También quiero congratularme
Now, I'd
y
also
felicitar
like to
a los Estados Unidos de
congratulate
Norteamérica,
the USA
a la República Islámica
and the Islamic Republic
Irán.
of Iran,
y también al resto de los miembros del
and
Consejo de Seguridad
also the other members of the Security
Permanente,
Council, the permanent
más
members of the
Alemania,
Security Council, plus
por haber
Germany,
arribado
for having reached
a un acuerdo en materia
an
nuclear
agreement on
que ayuda
nuclear issues,
a
which will
descomprimir
help
la situación y da más
to
certeza y seguridad
resolve the
a un mundo
situation and bring
envuelto
more
en
security to a
conflictos
country which
y en
is
belicismo.
to a world which is
Nosotros sabíamos
in war
de
and
estas
conflict.
negociaciones estábamos
Now, from these
esperanzados en que el acuerdo
negotiations, we do
finalmente llegado.
hope,
Ustedes se preguntarán, ¿y
although
cómo
it
sabíamos?
has not yet entered into force, we would like to
Simple, en el año
say that in
2010 nos
2010,
visitó en la Argentina
we had a visit in
Gary
Argentina
Seymour, en ese
for Mr.
entonces
Gary Seymour, and then
principal
he
asesor
was the
de la
main
Casa Blanca en materia
White
nuclear.
House advisor on nuclear issues.
Él nos vino a ver
He
a
came
Argentina con una
to
misión,
visit Argentina on a
con un
mission
objetivo,
with one goal,
que la Argentina,
and that was that
había
Argentina,
provisto
which had
en el año 1987, durante el gobierno, el
1987,
primer gobierno
under the
democrático
first democratic
y
government
bajo
and
el
under
control de la
the
OIEA,
control
la Organización Internacional en materia de control de armas y regulación nuclear,
of the IEA
había provisto
had
el combustible nuclear del
provided
denominado
for
reactor
nuclear
Teherán.
fuel,
Gary Seymour le explicó
and to him
a nuestro
we
canciller,
explained, our foreign minister
Héctor
explained,
Timmermans,
Mr. Hector Timmermans
que
explained,
estaban en negociaciones
that negotiations were underway
precisamente para llegar a un
specifically
acuerdo
to
y
reach
que
an agreement,
la República
and
Islámica
that
de
the
Irán
Islamic
no siguiera
Republic of
enriqueciendo uranio, lo
Iran
hiciera a menor cantidad,
was
pero que Irán decía que necesitaba enriquecer este reactor
had less
nuclear de Teherán, y
uranium, but
esto
it
entorpecía las
needed
negociaciones.
to
Nos venían a pedir a
continue with
nosotros,
this
los argentinos,
nuclear power station, and so they came to us, the Argentinians,
proveyéramos
to ask if we could
combustible nuclear
provide nuclear fuel
a la República
to
Islámica
the Islamic
de Irán.
Republic of
No
Iran.
estaba Rouhani todavía. Estaba
Mr.
Ahmadinejad.
Rouhani was
Ya
not
habían
yet
comenzado
there.
las
It
negociaciones.
was the previous president.
Me
The
acuerdo
negotiations
que
began then, and I
el
remember
canciller me vino a ver
that the foreign minister came to see
y me
me,
manifestó
and he
la propuesta que le habían traído.
submitted to me the proposal
Le
that
había
had been
adelantado al
submitted.
enviado de la Casa Blanca que
And he,
iba a ser muy difícil por la
the
situación que
advisor from
Argentina
the
tenía
White House
con la
said it would be very
República
difficult
Islámica
given
de
the
Irán,
relationship between Argentina and,
el atentado
and Iran,
terrorista
given the
que había
terrorist
sufrido
attack
la
which had
República
taken place
Argentina en la
in
AMIA
the
el 18
Republic
de
of
julio de 1994 y la decisión
Argentina
del juez de
in
la causa
1994,
de citar y acusar a
and
5
the
ciudadanos
decision of the
iraníes. En
judge
este
to
marco,
accuse a number of Iranian
tornaba
citizens. So in
imposible la
that context,
contribución de la
it was
Argentina
impossible for Argentina to
a este proceso de
make a
negociación que,
contribution to
reitero,
this negotiation process, which I
ya
repeat,
estaba en el año
was already
2010. Me vino a ver el canciller,
underway in
lo
2010.
recuerdo muy bien en mi despacho,
So I looked at the
y le
agreement
dije
in my office,
que si
and I said,
la petición
now if the request
se hacía por
was
escrito
made in
y
writing
firmada,
and it was signed,
nosotros,
we,
pese a todo, íbamos a colaborar porque
despite
creíamos
all
que era
that we've
importante lograr
gone through, because
el
we believed it
objetivo
was important to achieve the objective
de la no proliferación
of the
nuclear. Ustedes saben que
nuclear
Argentina
non-proliferation. You know
integra
that
el selecto club
Argentina
de países
is in amongst the small
productores de
club of
energía nuclear,
countries
pero que también
that produces nuclear fuel, but at the
somos
same
líderes en
time we
materia
are
de no
leaders in
proliferación.
terms
Por
of
lo tanto,
nuclear
para
non-proliferation. Therefore, for us,
la no proliferación nuclear es
non-proliferation,
también
nuclear non-proliferation
una cuestión de Estado.
is also a question
Así
of
se lo transmití
state.
a mi canciller,
So that's what I said to my foreign
quien lo
minister,
transmitió al
and
enviado de
he
la Casa
conveyed
Blanca,
that to
Gary
the
Seymour,
envoy from the
que aceptaríamos
White
proveer
House, Mr. Amor,
el
and we
combustible
said
porque era
that
propiedad de la Argentina
this
desde el año
fuel, this
87 y
nuclear
teníamos además
fuel was property
la
of
técnica para
Argentina,
hacerlo,
and we had the
a cambio,
necessary
obviamente,
technology to make
de que
it,
fuera
but
solicitado por
provided
escrito y
that this was
firmado.
requested in writing
fue
and signed,
transmitido.
and that was
Creo que
conveyed.
fue la última
I
vez
believe that
luego
was
de esa comunicación
the
que
last
nuestro canciller
time that
vio a Gary Seymour.
that
Por eso,
our foreign minister saw Mr.
cuando en el año
Seymour.
2013
Thus, in 2013,
la Argentina firma el
Argentina
memorándum de
signed
entendimiento
a member of
precisamente
understanding specifically
con la República Islámica de
with
Irán,
the Islamic
precisamente
Republic
para
of Iran
destrabar
to
la cuestión judicial que
deal with
tenía
the
paralizada la
legal-
causa desde años. Tengan en cuenta
the
que el
legal aspect of this
atentado
issue.
se produce
Now,
en 1994.
the,
Estamos hablando del año
we're talking about
2013.
in 1994 the
Otros
attack, but then in
gobiernos habían
2000,
sucedido, otras cosas
now we're in
habían
2013,
pasado.
things
Nosotros,
there'd been water on the bridge, there'd been new
tratábamos,
governments, but we were trying,
estamos firmemente
because we
convencidos en
are
la lucha
strongly
contra el
convinced
terrorismo
that it's important
y
to counter
también
terrorism, and
en la
also
memoria y en la verdad y
in
la
the memory
justicia
and for the
de
justice
llegar a aclarar,
to
a
clarify
encontrar a los
and
culpables
to
y castigar a
find
los
those
culpables.
who were guilty and to punish the guilty for that
Ese fue
terrorist
el
attack.
objetivo del memorándum de
That was
entendimiento.
the
Sin embargo,
objective
parece
of
que
the
al firmar el
memorandum of
de
understanding,
entendimiento,
but it
se
seems
hubieron desatado
that
los demonios.
the
Al cabo del tiempo, cuando ahora el 2
the
de
time
abril se
was
firme el
reached
acuerdo
when the
entre los
signing of the
5 más
agreement
1
between
e
the
Irán,
5+1 and Iran came.
no ya con Ahmadinejad, pero Rouhani, pero ya habían empezado las negociaciones.
Mr.
Uno
Rouhani
se
was in
pregunta
place, but
cuál era
the
el
negotiations
motivo
had already begun, and we didn't understand the reason
de
why.
oponerse y las críticas que se hacían
If
que
the
habíamos
critics were
negociado
being
con
made,
Irán,
if
un
they were
simple
negotiating
acuerdo de
simply
cooperación
a
judicial para que el
juridical
juez de la
cooperation
Argentina
agreement
pudiera
with
tomar
Iran so that the
declaración a los 5 ciudadanos
judge
iraníes
of
acusados en Teherán,
Argentina
porque
could
hay leyes que
deal with the
impiden
5 Iranian
la
citizens in
extradición
Tehran because
de
they're
ciudadanos iraníes.
preventing the
¿Cuál es el motivo?
extradition
Lo
of them.
escuché hoy
Now, what was the
aquí
reason? I
en boca
learned
de
it
otro
here
presidente cuando habló
from
de la
the
hipocresía
mouth of another president
en materia de las relaciones diplomáticas.
regarding hypocrisy in
Mucha
diplomatic
hipocresía.
relations. There's much hypocrisy.
Mucha mucha geopolítica
There's much
mezclada en el medio
geopolitical things being
y muy
involved
poco
here,
interés
and very little interest,
por
in
saldar
fact,
la memoria, la verdad y la justicia que
paying
exigen las
justice
víctimas
to the memories
y
of
sus
these
familiares.
victims and their families.
Y más tarde,
And then at a later stage,
cuando enviamos
when
este proyecto,
we
este
sent this
tratado al Congreso,
draft,
que fue
this
aprobado por el
treaty,
Congreso,
which
yo
was
le
agreed
deseo
by our Congress,
fervientemente al presidente Obama,
and I expressed
su
this
Congreso, el
to,
Congreso de los Estados Unidos,
I'm talking about the Congress of the
apruebe
US,
también el acuerdo,
I hope that
por
they
lo
will
menos
approve
no lo
this
trabe, porque
agreement,
será
or
una
at least will not
importante
delay it, because this
contribución a
will
la
make
paz
an important
mundial.
contribution to
Nosotros somos
global peace.
coherentes.
We are coherent in our approach.
No es que lo que vale para
It's
nosotros
not that
no vale
what
para
applies to us
nosotros,
doesn't
o tal
apply
vez
to others,
utilizamos
or that we should use
elementos o
elements
instrumentos
or
que
instruments
poco tienen que ver
which
con los
have
objetivos que
little to
declaramos
do
para
with
deteriorar
objectives, but we just
la
make
relación o la
declarations to
imagen de un
improve
país.
the
Pero esta
image
es
of
la
a
verdad de la
country.
situación.
But it's actually the reality of the
Finalmente,
situation.
El juez de la
And
causa
finally,
AMIA
the
también
judge in
consideró
this
viable
case decided that it was
para esclarecer y poder tomar
possible to
declaración a los
clarify the
acusados.
situation
No lo hizo así
from
un
the
tribunal de
accused.
alzada y hoy la causa
And today, this
está
case
paralizada virtualmente. Hoy podemos apelar a la buena
we
voluntad
can
únicamente
call
de la
upon
República
only
Islámica
the
del Irán,
goodwill
porque
of the
no tenemos
Islamic
otro
of Iran,
instrumento
because we don't have any other
para
leverage,
poder
any other
lograr la
instrument
declaración
to
de
have
los iraníes. Pero también han pasado cosas.
an outcome on this. But
En mi país,
things
en la
have
República
happened
Argentina,
in my country, the Republic of
hoy está en
Argentina.
marcha
Now
el juicio de
we
encubrimiento
are dealing with the
de
case
las más
of
altas
recovering,
autoridades
and this is
y
at the level of the
funcionarios de
highest
inteligencia
levels in the
y del
intelligence
Poder
service
Judicial
and
intervinientes en la
the,
causa
and
AMIA
the
desde el año
legal
1994. Se ha abierto
legal bodies involved in the AMIA case since
el
1974.
juicio oral y
Now,
público.
the public and oral
También, luego del
sentence
desplazamiento
and following
que ordené
the displacement,
sectores
which
de la
was
inteligencia argentina
ordered by Argentinian intelligence
por
services
fuertes sospechas
on the grounds
de
of strong
entorpecer la
suspicions
investigación
for the
y
investigations
de oponerse precisamente
and
a lo
to-
que era destrabar la causa para ir
to
a tomar
deal with
declaración a
this
los
case
iraníes.
so that we
a
could
fines
deal with
del
the
año pasado,
Iranians at the end of last
produje
year led
el
to
desplazamiento de algunos altos
the movement of some
funcionarios
high
algunos de
senior
ellos
officials, some of them
que venían desde el año 1972.
which were who were in office
pasaron
since
por todas las dictaduras y
1972.
también por
They
todos
lived
los
through all
gobiernos,
these dictatorships,
incluido
all the
también el nuestro.
governments, including my own.
Y que hoy
And today,
están radicados aquí en Estados
they
Unidos.
are here. They've moved to
A
the
los pocos
US.
días
A few days
de
ago,
producirse este desplazamiento se
when
produce
these
la muerte
transfers were made,
del fiscal Nisman a cargo de la causa.
the investigative prosecutor
Todo esto
Nisman
constituye
died, was killed. Now, all this,
Algo más de lo que dije alguna vez. Yo sostenía siempre que la
I
AMIA
have
era
also always
un
maintained that
complicado
AMIA
tablero de ajedrez de la
was
política
a
internacional. Hoy
complicated
siento que,
chessboard of international
además de
politics.
ese tablero de ajedrez,
And
es
beyond
una
being
telaraña,
a chessboard,
una
it's
telaraña de intereses
a tyranny of
externos a mi país.
external interest,
Una
external to my
telaraña en la que,
country,
como en todas las
a
telarañas, solamente
tyranny
quedan
in which
atrapados los más débiles
the
y
most
los más
weak and
chicos,
vulnerable, the smallest, are trapped in this
y
game,
los otros permanecen
and the rest
afuera.
are on the outside, on the
En este
sidelines.
juicio oral que se está llevando a
Now,
cabo por
this
encubrimiento,
oral
luego de
hearing which is taking
14
place
años de
after
demora también
14
en ser
years of
comenzado.
delay since it began.
También en la investigación que se
The
está desarrollando por la
investigation which
muerte
is
del
taking
fiscal
place
Nisman
into
comienzan a
the
aparecer
death of Nisman,
datos reveladores
we're
y
coming
hasta
up
estremecedores.
with very interesting
Señoras y señores, de
information of linkages
Con servicios
with
secretos
secret
externos,
services from other
con
countries
cuentas en el exterior,
who have
con
accounts
vinculaciones con
aboard
los
with
fondos
links
buitres, no
with the
denunciados por
vulture
esta presidenta, sino
funds.
por propios
Not-
miembros de la comunidad
And,
judía
and I'm
de
talking
mi
about
país.
members of the
Yo no
Jewish
vengo acá a
community
hablar
in my country.
con hipocresía ni con
I'm
mentiras.
not talking about not
Vengo a
talking
contar
about
las cosas que
lies
están
or hypocrisies.
pasando.
I'm talking about what is
Y también
actually happening.
Hemos citado en una
And we
oportunidad hace
have,
muy
on a
pocos
number
días,
of occasions, a
al
couple of
embajador
days ago,
norteamericano en
mentioned
nuestro
to
país
the North
para
American, the
pedir
US
explicaciones
ambassador in our
acerca de
country
qué calidad
as
se
to
encuentra
in what quality
este ex miembro
this former member
de los servicios de
of
inteligencia
the intelligence
argentinos
services
aquí
of
en
Argentina
Estados Unidos.
is
Él
in the
estuvo a
US.
cargo
He
toda la
was
investigación de la
charged with the
causa
entire
AMIA
investigation into the
desde el
AMIA
primer
affair since the very first
Cuando
day,
yo apenas era
when I was hardly
una diputada provincial
a provincial
allá en el sur
member
del
of
país, en la
parliament from the
Patagonia,
south of the country, from Patagonia.
donde era una convencional constituyente cuando
When-
explotó la bomba en la AMIA. Esta persona ya estaba a cargo de
That's
la
where I
investigación.
was when the bomb was placed, and he
ahora
was
se está
responsible for
comprobando
this
la investigación
investigation. And now
sobre la muerte del fiscal
the
Nisman, su
investigation into Mr.
vinculación total y
Nieman,
absoluta con el
and
fiscal,
he's totally linked with
otros personajes.
and with other individuals.
Nuestra embajadora en
Our
Estados
ambassador in
Unidos,
the
entonces,
United States, then,
por instrucciones de la
on the
Cancillería,
instructions of the Foreign Office,
ha presentado dos notas ante el
has
Departamento de
submitted a
Estado
note
y ha
to the
tenido
Department of
entrevistas con el
State and
Departamento
has
de
had a
Estado
meeting
también
with the Department of State
para requerir
to
en
request
carácter de que se encuentra esta persona
if this
aquí en
person
Estados
should be
Unidos.
here in the
Yo diría
United
casi
States.
protegida,
He's
no
almost
se sabe de qué,
protected. I don't know
ni de
protected
quién,
from what or from
pero está
whom,
aquí.
but he is here and
Y hace
protected.
unos días, los nuevos
And a few
fiscales
days ago,
a cargo de la causa AMIA
the person
han
responsible
pedido a
for the AMIA
Interpol
course has asked
que libre
Interpol
orden azul,
to
esto es,
submit an
orden
order. This is
de paradero
a
sobre
warrant
esta persona.
on the whereabouts
Con lo
of this
cual,
individual.
Como vinimos haciendo desde el año 2007,
Since
primero
we've
el
been doing
presidente
since the
Kirchner,
2007 with President
después
Kirchner,
yo,
and since then
todos los años
myself,
solicitando la
over all these
colaboración
years we've been asking
de la
for an
República
extension
Islámica de Irán
from
para el esclarecimiento del atentado.
from
Hoy también
Iran,
pedimos la
and
colaboración
today
de
we're asking
Estados
them again
Unidos. La
for the
están
cooperation
pidiendo
of the
fiscales
United States.
en nuestro país que quieren saber el paradero
Judges
de
in our
este
country,
funcionario
we
al que
want to
todos
know
mencionan
where are these people, where are these
como muy
these
vinculado a la
officials.
causa, e inclusive se menciona también
And also reference has
en la
been
causa de
made
encubrimiento.
to the question of a
Ustedes se
cover-up.
preguntarán,
So you could
¿por qué
ask
dedico tanto
yourselves,
tiempo
why am I giving so
este
much
tema?
time over to this issue?
Es mínimo al
It's
lado
the
del
least
tiempo
the least amount of time I can give
organizaciones
in
pagadas por
terms
los fondos
of
buitres han
what's
dedicado
the
en este
time that
país
these
a
vulture funds have
criticarnos,
allocated
a difamarnos y a
to
agraviarnos como que éramos
criticizing
cómplices
us
del
and
régimen
saying
iraní.
that we are complicit with the Iranian
Somos
regime.
cómplices del régimen iraní.
If we are complicit with the Iranian
¿Qué es el
regime,
presidente Barack
then
Obama entonces?
what is President Obama in that case?
También
Also,
yo creo que no se puede seguir con la
I-
hipocresía ni con el doble estándar en
we
materia
can't
diplomática.
have double standards in diplomacy.
No podemos.
We cannot.
No podemos. No
We
podemos
cannot.
seguir
We
utilizando
cannot continue
armas,
to use
instrumentos
weapons,
de intriga
instruments
internacional,
of
dignos de
international
John le Carré, pero
intrigue
antiguos,
drawn
señores.
from Jean le Carré
Porque
novel,
¿saben qué?
because we know
El mundo de las
the world
comunicaciones,
of communications,
ese mundo de la
this
globalización
world
de
of
Internet,
globalization and the
que
internet,
algunos soñaban
that we
con
just
que iba a
dreamt
permitirles dominar
about,
mejor a todo
which
el mundo,
is now dominating the entire
hoy
world.
también es un poderoso
Today
instrumento
is
de
a very
comunicación
powerful
para
communications
todo el
tool
mundo y
for
para
all
toda
of
la
us,
aldea global
for
donde al
everybody,
momento se sabe
so that
qué es
everybody
lo que está
knows
pasando
what is
en un
happening
determinado lugar. Por
at a
eso,
particular point in the
la
world.
Argentina,
So in Argentina,
mi gobierno,
my
nuestro gobierno,
government, our government,
va a seguir incansablemente
will
buscando la
tirelessly
verdad
seek
y
the
la
truth
justicia en la
and
causa
justice
AMIA.
in the AMIA
Solicitamos la
case,
colaboración,
and we
entonces,
call for the cooperation,
del
therefore,
país cuyos
of
ciudadanos
the
son
countries
acusados
whose
y de
citizens
este,
are
y de
accused,
este país,
and this
Estados
country here, the USA,
para que también
so that they
contribuya
should also contribute
a aclarar
to clarifying
la presencia de este ciudadano que va a ser
why
requerido
these
seguramente,
citizens are
como
present,
ya está siendo
because they
requerido
will
por
be
los organismos del
required, as
Estado,
they have been also
en nuestro
already
país,
required,
la
to be in
República
our country,
Argentina.
the Republic of Argentina.
Pero frente a este mundo de crisis
But faced with
económica,
this world of economic
atentamente
crisis,
algunos
I listened
discursos
closely
hoy,
to some of today's
y la
speeches,
verdad que
and the truth is
los enemigos cambian y mutan
that
con una
these
velocidad
change is taking
asombrosa.
place at an amazing speed.
Recuerdo la última
I
reunión a la
remember
que pude
the most
participar
recent
del
meeting I
G20, en la
took
anterior no pude hacerlo por razones
took part
de
in
salud
of the G20.
en
The
San
last one I couldn't
Petersburgo,
attend because of health reasons.
donde
The one in St.
prácticamente
Petersburg were practically
quienes enfrentaban al gobierno de Siria,
the government of
los
Syria
Fighter Freedom, los
were
guerreros de
faced
la
by
libertad,
the freedom
eran los que debían
fighters,
ser apoyados
and they
por
wanted
todo Occidente. Hoy,
to be they were supported
los
by
freedom
the
fighters
entire Western world, but
forman
today
parte
the
del ISIS.
freedom fighters are part of
Y
ISIS.
la verdad, yo quiero
And the
preguntarles a
truth is,
ustedes,
I would like to ask you actually, I'd like to ask you, I have a question as to how this group actually functions, the apparently Islamic group. Who finances them? When you see these horrendous scenes, when you see clearly that there are 3 or 4 cameras who are filming, it's like a movie, that this is not simply a homemade film like a fundamentalist group could make with a tiny camera. No, there is almost a Hollywood set there. It's like a Ford Coppola movie. And we never see these cameras. It would be good for us to ask ourselves, how? Where does all the money come to fund all this? This would help to ensure that we can find the keys to combat one of the worst scourges that is facing humanity today. And this is the fundamentalism of whatever nature, dogmatic, religious, and basically those which consider the neighbor as their enemy, as a target to be eliminated. Now, I'd like to leave this assembly today with these problems of debt and the economic problems and terrorist attacks and international complicities. I also wish to pay a homage today to the continent that I belong to, Latin America. A few hours ago, I was here. Before I spoke, a president, a compañero that I admire and love very much, the president of Cuba, Raúl Castro, now, for the first time in 17 years, the president of Cuba is back here in this GA. Now, the truth is that for us, Latin Americans, those members of Mercosur, UNASUR, and CELAC, who have struggled so much, who have so much discussed to ensure that Cuba can return to be part of these multilateral entities. We see this as a triumph of the perseverance on the part of the region and fundamentally achievement of Cuba. And we also recognize the government of the USA, who has just opened its mind and has understood that things could not continue as they were in the past. And I'd like to thank another Latin American who was also in this very same hall, perhaps has greater authority than the rest of us, because he sits on the seat of St. Peter in Rome and who played a determining role in establishing the agreement between the US and Cuba. And he came here and he said to the world, and he spoke from this platform to the world, and he said that money cannot continue to determine politics, and that it's fundamental. There's a basic principle that is respected by all religions here. Do not do to others what you would not like others to do to you. As a Latin American, also, the joy of seeing a few days ago in Havana the photograph of the President of Colombia, the President of Cuba, and the representative of FARC, launching the end of a conflict that has been going on for more than 50 years. And they tried to put an end to the guns, that no, the social, political, and cultural conflicts cannot be resolved by guns and bombs. They're resolved by talking together and by accepting the other person. I also welcome very much the fact that I am part of this Latin American region, where we do not have religious conflicts nor cultural conflicts, but where we are all sons or grandchildren of immigrants. And we're receiving internal migration as well. In my country, the national universities, the public universities, host students from around the continent. We don't give a red card to anybody because we believe it's necessary to contribute to and to establish a fairer world. And for that reason I say that Latin America, having been seen as the emblem of inequalities, with the growth which we've seen through our governments, our national governments abroad, our popular national government and democratic governments, which some people call populist governments, but these include millions of our fellow citizens. They allow our citizens to enjoy the benefits of education, health, housing. We say that we are a growing continent, a continent that is integrating together, and perhaps this contribution that we have made from Argentina since 2001, we've been reconstructing our country, and we will be growing by 2.7% of our GDP. All this allows us to say that inclusion, that growth, the development, the production, the trade will be based on incorporating all those people, involving all those people who've been employed, improving the wages of those who earn miserable wages, respecting the rights of young children and young people, and to create, on the basis of synthesis, a fairer society, a more equitable society, and a more egalitarian society. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
En nombre de la Asamblea
On
General,
behalf of the General Assembly,
agradezco a la
I
Presidenta
wish
de la
to thank the
República
President of the
Argentina
Republic of Argentina
la declaración
for
que
the
acaba de
statement just
formular.
made.
Ruego a los representantes que
May I
permanezcan
request
sentados
representatives
mientras
to remain
despedimos a la
seated while we
Presidenta
greet
de la
the
República
President
Argentina.
of the Republic of Argentina.
Hemos escuchado al último orador para esta
We've
sesión.
heard the last speaker for
La
this
14ª sesión
session.
plenaria comenzará
The
inmediatamente
next plenary will start
después de que se
immediately
levante
following
esta sesión
the adjournment of
a
this
fin de continuar con el
meeting in order
debate
to continue
general.
with the general debate.
Se levanta esta sesión.
The meeting is adjourned.
Se declara abierta la
I call
15ª
to
sesión plenaria de
order
la Asamblea General.
the 15th plenary meeting of the General Assembly.
Seguimos.
We will now continue.
La Asamblea escuchará ahora el
The
discurso del
Assembly will now
excelentísimo
hear an
señor
address by His Excellency Alexander Lukashenko,
presidente de la República
President
de
of the
Belarus.
Republic of Belarus.
Pido al oficial
I
de
request protocol
que acompañe a su
to escort
excelencia.
His Excellency.
En nombre de la
On
Asamblea
behalf of
General,
the General Assembly,
tengo el honor
I
de
have
dar
the
la
honor
bienvenida
to
a las
welcome to
Naciones
the United
Unidas
Nations
Excelentísimo
His Excellency Alexander Lukashenko, President of the Republic of Belarus, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Спасибо. Уважаемый господин председатель,
Mr. President,
уважаемые дамы и господа,
ladies and gentlemen,
70 лет тому
70
назад,
years ago,
после окончания
after
Второй
the end
мировой
of the
войны,
Second World War,
у человечества появилась надежда на установление справедливого миропорядка, основанного на всеобщем взаимопонимании и сотрудничестве. Однако последовавший затем период холодной войны снова расколол мир на противостоящие блоки. После распада Советского Союза и социалистического лагеря многим казалось, что наконец-то исчезнут основания для конфронтации государств, военных конфликтов. Увы, пока эти
disappear. Alas, unfortunately, these hopes have not been realized. It is with regret that we have to state that our world has not become more stable, more predictable, or more comfortable for the majority of the people on the planet to live, despite the enormous work and tremendous efforts made to implement the large-scale plans of the United Nations. At the summit yesterday, we have adopted an ambitious agenda for the UN for the next 15 years. The outcome document focuses on 5 strategic areas that are for all of us vitally important. And they are people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. And these notions have not emerged from nowhere. They are a logical continuation of efforts to achieve the Millennium Development Goals. Nonetheless, these efforts give rise to conflicting emotions. Yes, there are certain shifts in reducing global levels of poverty, in increasing the level of protection, and improving the health of mothers and children, in ensuring access to education. But speaking about achievements, we also have to acknowledge that we did not have a qualitative breakthrough for the good of human civilization. Moreover, we see that the world today is being engulfed by new challenges, and then old problems are getting more acute. And these challenges and problems do not concern just one area, but rather all of the more important aspects of human activity. Firstly, today we're confronted with something that is absolutely new, absolutely new geopolitical phenomena in military conflicts, and this was mentioned by many an orator before me. What we are noticing is that a very high level of tension in international relations in the unprecedented level, and threats are coming to the fore which cannot be reacted to. Focusing on minor disputes over secondary issues, the global communities overlook the emergence of aggressive terrorists. States. The entire system of international security is undergoing a severe crisis. There is a loss of mutual trust between global players. There is an unwillingness to compromise and a return to a bloc-like confrontation have basically put the world on the verge of a new war. New efforts continue to impose a new development model on other countries. What does this lead to? As a result of foreign interference, export of color revolutions, and artificial regime change, countries which used to be stable beforehand have now been plunged into chaos and anarchy. And this is all given the gloss of democracy. Well, instead of the promised democracy and prosperity, people in these countries are living through extreme suffering and have been forced to flee. Crowds of migrants are besieging Europe today. And this, too, has now become a very acute international problem. Today, we increasingly depend on each other, and actions of one country have direct implications on the interests of many others. there is no longer such thing as an invulnerable country. And we must honestly acknowledge that we do not have an effective system of checks and balances. The states that claim global leadership, unfortunately, cannot escape the temptation to use force and economic blackmail in order to promote their own interests. The world has come dangerously close to a de facto renunciation of the principles of international law as they are enshrined in the UN Charter. Therefore, I'm deeply convinced that the organization needs a new, wide-ranging discussion of the principles of the future coexistence of states and peoples. I mentioned this before, but I want once again to stress it again. Our organization must not become a forum for mutual accusation and confrontation between states. There is no alternative to dialogue. We will have to deal with our problems collectively. One can, of course, build new walls, draw new division lines, but this will not make our problems disappear. Secondly, what is a serious challenge to the world's stability today is global economic threats, currency wars, sanctions, the redivision of commodity markets, unfair competition, and other negative phenomena do compound the global crisis. And attempts on the part of a number of leading states to solve their problems at the expense of other countries also add to the confrontation and the feeling of estrangement. We can get out of this deadlock only through a comprehensive cooperation of economies of all countries and sustainable development for the benefit of the entire community, not just individual countries. At the same time, what is important is to make sure that the poorer and poorest states are supported. It is only through common efforts that we will be able to forge a new formula of universally mutually beneficial cooperation. And we suggest that as a foundation for this is an integration of integration as the most topical trend of the modern world. Just take a look at how many new integration groups and entities have emerged in recently. And today we're talking about the prospects for cooperation between the European Union and the Eurasian Economic Union, about the large-scale Great Silkway project, about creating the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Transatlantic Free Trade Zone, and dozens of others. If we succeed in avoiding unnecessary and dangerous competition amongst integration models and instead make them compatible and complementary to each other, we will be able to establish a global integration structure which would cover the entire planet and closely link different regions and whole continents. Such a paradigm would provide for peaceful coexistence of different nations and states united by the common purpose of progress and prosperity. The value of the integration process lies in its democratic nature. To a certain extent, it equalizes the opportunities for all stakeholders and enables for small and middle-sized countries to develop their potential and become an important link in this process. The key prerequisite for integration is mutual benefit. The desire to reap immediate unilateral advantage is, on the contrary, the root of evil. We need to realize our responsibility for the future and think of what we will leave behind. We must not forget that extreme poverty in some regions of our planet, outrageous social inequalities, disproportion between states, lack of opportunities, first of all, among the young people, creates fertile ground for international terrorism and organized crime. The third cluster of global threats that cause concern are of social, humanitarian, and environmental nature. Of late, we've been hearing calls for maximum freedom, and they put to the test the basic foundations of human society, including such notions as family, morals, and virtue. Irresponsible social ideas may lead to new divisions between different cultures and
began to give birth to harsh religious rejection and ethnic conflicts. Do these social innovators consider the consequences of their words and actions, I wonder? The same selfish attitude is characteristic of the mankind's approach to nature. For many years now, the international community has been trying, with no success, to meet the challenge of climate change, and many simply prefer to shift the burden of responsibility onto others, the next generation. Thinking about such problems, one cannot help but arrive at one idea. It seems that there is one deep-lying root of all these crises. It is an artificial cult of individual rights and freedoms at the expense of collective social interests. Under the guise of protecting human rights, the ousting and overthrow of governments, destruction of states and wars of resources are being justified. Chaos and anarchy are proliferated, and predatory attitude to nature and pursuit of easy profit are fostered. This leads to degradation of human consciousness when someone's perverted whims are treated as standard. Such approaches give green light to social degradation, to the decay of moral principles and values. The very boundary between good and evil disappears. Belarus does not claim to have a magic recipe to how these issues can be resolved, but we sincerely believe that the answer lies in the realm of the ideas which were proposed to the world 70 years ago by the UN founding fathers. And first and foremost, I refer here to unconditional condemnation of violence. Wars must not be an instrument for settling scores between states. Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding, as was said by Einstein, the wise. And this is something that it's hard to argue with. It's only through self-restraint that we can ensure the well-being and protection for all, both powerful and vulnerable alike. And this is precisely the very essence of international law, which is the only alternative to the law of the jungle. Belarus will always support any and all effort and initiative aimed at strengthening the system of international law, and this is our key foreign policy priority. However, peace and security globally alone cannot safeguard peace and security through the world. What is also needed is to create at the international level decent conditions of life for every individual. I'm deeply convinced that only a strong state can adequately cope with such a task. It's paradoxical, but humanity has entered the 21st century with a large number of failed and ineffective states. Now, what is a failed state? It's basically the absence of the rule of law and stability, outrageous inequality and extreme poverty, lack of innovation, and the absence of healthy moral values amongst the young. We in Belarus understand this very well. Over the past 2 decades, we have been purposefully building a sovereign, independent state with a socially oriented economy. We have paid and continue paying utmost attention to the policies that strengthen the family and help young people fully realize their potential. Let me be frank, we're very concerned by the ongoing destruction of the traditional family values in a number of countries. We particularly do not like being invited to accept certain moral deviations and various social innovations as natural. I do not want to dwell this too much. I am afraid I will get bogged down here and will be criticized. But I feel compelled to ask the following. Who is going to be giving birth to children? We will do everything to ensure that our grandchildren and their descendants preserve socially nurtured moral values, good traditions of spirituality and culture. And I can assure everyone with absolute confidence that anarchy, lawlessness and violence will never find room on the soil of my country, no matter what guise they take, including democracy. We are strong and self-assured enough not to let them in from the outside. A stable Belarus will continue to remain a provider of regional and international security. We intend to forge equal and mutually beneficial and respectful relations with all countries around the world. Good neighborly relations and mutual assistance are of special value to us, and that is why we strive for a peaceful settlement of the crisis in brotherly Ukraine as well as in other hotspots on the planet. Belarus will continue to be actively engaged in collective efforts to meet global threats and challenges, first and foremost within international organizations. These organizations have invaluable expertise and potential, and Belarus can offer the international community her experience, although limited, in tackling a number of problems. For example, the Chernobyl disaster and eliminating its consequences, dealing with the issue of trafficking in people. Thinking about our national experience, I can reach the following conclusion, and it is that only an alliance of strong, responsible and effective states united by the system of international law can adequately respond to modern global threats and challenges. And here, in this regard, the role of the United Nations is crucial. These days, we hear a lot of criticism about the UN, and the Republic of Belarus, of course, shares the key idea that the United Nations should keep abreast of the times. The important thing here is that as we reform, let's make sure that we do not throw out the main thing, namely that we need to keep intact the principles and goals of the UN Charter. It's important also to understand that the UN, as I said on many occasions, is all of us. And depending on how coordinated and constructive we will be, that will determine the well-being of the world community. Mr. President, I certainly do not want to sound once again as a prophet here on the second day of our work, but we cannot escape the feeling that what we're witnessing in the world is the specter of a new massive war. We must not allow this sinister vision to turn into reality. Yesterday, we discussed very important issues, the program for the future of the United Nations, which is very important. But when we're talking, when mentioning sustainable people to many people, to millions of people, this sounds as a sacrilege because they are dying. Children and the old people are dying. What we need to do is come together and pass one decision only, put an end to all wars and conflicts. To all of those which have erupted and are ravaging our planet. To conclude, I would like to quote an eminent personality, Nelson Mandela. This unbroken fighter for justice in the world once said, sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. You can be that generation. I hope very much that such a destiny will indeed befall our generation. I'm confident.
All right, that is a wrap on the portion of that event that we were able to record. I hope you learned a lot. I know I told you guys at 3 o'clock we'd be going live to a Planned Parenthood rally here in Phoenix. It looks like our videographer, Rick Davis, is still on his way to that event, so we do not have that feed in right this second. So, it looks like I am going to talk about weather with Dave Munsey momentarily. I know Kinsey is just waiting to talk to Dave Munsey to grab him. So while I wait for Dave Munsey, let's go ahead and watch this short clip of Secretary of State John Kerry from this morning.
Friends, the Foreign Minister of Japan, Fumio Kishida, and the Foreign Minister of the Republic of Korea, Yoon Byung-se, thank you very much, both of you, for joining us here this morning for a discussion. The primary purpose of this is to recognize that the region is going through certain challenges, but also faces major opportunities. And as we are negotiating an historic trade agreement, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, there are important economic opportunities, but there are also very important security challenges. the Democratic Republic of Korea, North Korea, presents an ongoing security challenge to everybody. We will talk about that here this morning. And also, we face a common challenge with respect to climate change on a global basis, and we're all working hard to lead into the Paris negotiations, which we are very much committed to and determined to make successful. So I'm happy to welcome you here this morning. I look forward to our discussion. My pleasure to recognize the Minister from Japan first, and then my friend Yoon Byung-se. Mr. Minister.
はい、日米韓のこの外相会談ですが、約1年ぶりの開催となりました。ケリー長官、ユン長官とお会いできますこと、大変嬉しく思っておりますし、今回の議長は、ケリー長官にお願いをしております。ご努力に感謝を申し上げます。そして、北朝鮮をはじめとするこのアジア太平洋地域のこの安全保障環境、大変厳しいものがあります。こうした環境を考えますときに、日米同盟、あるいは米韓同盟の役割、ますます大きくなってきていると感じております。その中にありまして、この日米韓3カ国のこの外務大臣が一堂に会し、北朝鮮をはじめとするグローバルな課題、さらにはこの地域情勢について率直な意見交換を行うということ、これは極めて有意義なことであります。今日も安全保障をはじめ、この幅広い分野で日米韓3カ国の対話、そして協力を一層深めていきたいと考えています。以上です。
Thank you very much for the Byung-se.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Minister Kishida. Good morning, everybody. Last year, during at the margin of ARF ministerial meeting, we had a very good conversation on our mutual common interest. And this time, we are meeting here in New York at a very critical juncture when the eyes of the world are set on the major challenges involving all of us in Northeast Asia and also in the world, especially the publicized threats from North Korea on possible strategic provocations in the coming weeks actually are drawing our attention. So our discussions today will be very timely and very relevant. So it's very important for us to send out very clear and positive message to North Korea so that there will not be any misjudgment and misbehavior. And also, as we witnessed over the last several days, our consultations will go beyond the peninsula issues or Northeast Asian issues. Now it's time for us to spend more of our energy and time on the global agendas, which we are in our common interest as well. So in that regard, I appreciate, John, your leadership and President Obama's leadership over the last several days, including PKO Summit and climate change initiatives. So Korea is ready to work closely with you, Japan and the United States, and we'll try to upgrade our conversation in terms of quality and the quantities. So thank you very much again.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Byung-se. If we could please ask our friends in the media to now shut down, and if they would be friends.
So the reason that video was only 5 minutes is because, as you heard from John Kerry, he just asked his friends in the media to shut down. I guess they did not want to stream the whole event or share it all with us, the public. So that is all we got to see. In case you didn't notice, Dave Munsey is not sitting next to me. He is just working to get our maps together to give us a weather update in case you did not see the title of this event, this live stream, Triple Digits to Continue. It is really hot here, and for our regular viewers, I know you might be thinking, triple digits, Arizona, what's the big deal? The big deal is that it's the end of September, like almost October, and it's still very, very hot, above average temperatures. Dave Munsey will let us know how long the hot weather is going to last, so he'll be here momentarily. In the meantime, I'm going to play for you a couple of stories that we got from Fox National, starting with, since we're talking politics still, might as well play a couple political stories, starting with the budget battle in Congress. Let's watch.
The U.S. Senate is expected to give final approval today on a spending bill that would prevent the government from shutting down later this week. This after senators voted Monday to end a filibuster.
We are seeing positive movement on creating a bipartisan budget, which is what we all want to see happen.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell claims the bill, which would fund the government at current levels through December 11th, is the only viable way forward in the short term. But some of his Republican colleagues disagree.
I'm steadfastly opposed to a continuing resolution because it continues all the bad spending and the debt.
The stopgap spending measure is aimed at buying time for negotiators to reach a longer-term budget agreement that lasts through September 2016.
Who's putting in place these interim budgets? It's not the Budget Committee. It's not the appropriations process. That would be regular order. That's what all of us are in favor of. That's what we promised the people. Instead, now you get these crazy budgets that are just being thrown about.
Some conservative lawmakers are upset because the bill does not defund Planned Parenthood. The health organization has been under fire since a series of videos were released that appear to show officials discussing how they sell tissue from aborted fetuses to medical researchers.
We should use our constitutional power of the purse to decline to give $500 million of taxpayer money to Planned Parenthood, a private organization. It's not part of the government. It's currently under multiple criminal investigations.
The House is expected to vote on the spending bill by Thursday's midnight deadline. Kelly Wright, Fox News.
All right, so you just heard Senator Ted Cruz comment on the Planned Parenthood discussion. Hi, Dave Munsey.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
All right.
Yeah, let me sit in this front. Oops. Oh.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Scoot over a little bit so that you're...
How you doing?
I'm good. You're looking at my lunch.
I know.
It was
It
Asian
looks like
food.
it was very good.
It was good when it was warm.
Oh, okay.
Dave Munsey, can I have you scoot over a little closer? Because we only see half your
Certainly.
face. Perfect.
There we go.
So it's really hot outside.
No, it's not.
I mean, okay, sorry. Not compared to some of the temperatures we experienced in June and July and August,
Yep.
but I think it is unnecessarily hot given that we had recently seen a cool down.
No, let me ask you this. Have we broken any records?
Not yet, right?
Not yet.
But I hear that we might.
There might be one tomorrow. Tomorrow we're forecasting 1.7 and the record is 1.7. So
That's not fun.
Oh, that smells really good.
My food?
Oh,
from
yeah.
lunch?
Yeah.
Well, Payway is just down the street at 7th Avenue.
You got me going. I might have to go down there.
I'm assuming you're going to go there for lunch,
You never
dinner.
know. You never know.
Do you have some graphics for us?
Yeah, I do have a graphic, and that's it. That's what I was just talking about there. We're forecasting the high at 1.7 is 1.7. 1.6 the next day, 1.7 is the high. 100 the next day, 1.7 is the high. 98 the next day, 1.5 is the high. And 95 the next day. See, there's a little cool down right there.
On Friday.
Right there.
It doesn't start cooling down until I leave for California.
Well, that's, you see, we don't do the weather according to your schedule.
Yeah, it's
You
like
have to
all the
understand
weekends
that.
they stay in town, it's hot.
There
Every
you
weekend
go.
that I decide
Well, then
to
why don't you
leave
get out of
Arizona-
town so the rest of us can cool off?
You mean more often?
Yes. And you're leaving town this weekend and it's cooling off, right?
I know.
There it is, folks.
People need to stop getting married, I guess.
Write in, give her suggestions of places to go on weekends. See, so the cool down is there, and you have to understand as well, Thursday is the first day of October.
It is.
Yeah, so now we're going another month. The
106
normal
degrees.
high, look at the normal, what the normals are for this time of year.
95.
95 to 92 over a 10-day period. You see, it goes to 92
so we're
over a
still
10-day period.
above average.
We're
for
way
the-
above average.
It's not. That's what I'm saying. It's not pleasant. I would like a high of 88.
Let me find some place where it's 88.
Well, let me.
You find a place, and then I'll drive you over to the airport, and you can go there.
All right. You challenged me.
86 in L.A. and that's where you're going. And that's where you're going.
There you go.
And that's where you're going, right?
Yes.
Well, see, there, a problem solved.
Boom.
Give me a new problem.
We have solved the problem. Look at that. I guess that's where I'll have to travel, Dave Munsey.
There you go. She's on her way.
87 Friday, 84 Saturday, 74 on Sunday. Meanwhile, here in Arizona, we have unnecessarily warm temperatures.
Somebody feels sorry for you because you couldn't finish your lunch. She finished a great deal of it, believe me. She's not that.
I just eat. It takes me really long time to, eat all my food. It's a slow process.
She did. It's not. There's not much left, so she didn't miss much.
Tess, do you have any advice for Tess? She's gonna wait until next weekend to plant her spinach.
That would be a good idea. I don't know the growing and weather conditions of spinach, but the heat will be off a little bit. The heat will be off a little bit next week, and we're going to get into that time of year here where the heat starts falling off on a regular basis. It could pop back up again. We have had 100-degree temperatures right up until the 15th of October, and pretty warm ones after that. So that can happen. That can happen.
Couple things I want to mention.
Okay.
Tomorrow is your 40th anniversary.
Tomorrow's my 40th
That's
anniversary.
exciting. Today marks my 1-year anniversary of my job interview here.
Well, congrats on your job interview here. Okay.
I was flown out here, and I interviewed here on September 29th. So it's anniversary week.
I was a walk-in.
Okay.
Or a walk-on, is that what they call?
I guess so.
Yeah, I just walked in with my resume.
And they're like, we like
They
you.
did, yeah, they didn't invite me. I just walked in. I walked in the door, but I had worked with someone who worked here. I worked with a guy that was doing the morning show on the radio. This used to be 2 radio stations and a TV station. This was an AM station and an FM station and a TV station. The AM station was at one time Cool AM, Kool AM, the most listened to radio station in the Valley, bar none. And that was in the late 50s through the 60s and even a lot of the 70s. That it just dominated everything. It was the old guard type station. It had all the old names: Homer Lane, Bill Close. I know them all, and I can't pull them all out. But they were all here. All the named people were here. And the FM station was just a music station. When I got here, the FM station was an oldies station, and that's where I started. I started in the FM station, and I was doing the 11 o'clock weather because we didn't have a noon news. We had an 11 o'clock news because at that time...
11 a.m.
11 a.m., yes. The reason we had an 11 a.m. news is because As the World Turns dominated. And they played it at noon. They played it at noon every day, and it just had to stay there. So yeah, there's a lot of history. It goes back a long ways. But this used to be, there used to be in the neighborhood of 300 employees in the building here, because it was, like I say, 2 radio stations and a TV station at one time.
Tess says, I remember walking into businesses to fill out applications asking if they were hiring.
Yeah, that's what you do. That's exactly what I was doing. I think the day I came in here, I had been to 2 or 3 different radio stations and another TV station. I wasn't really looking for a television job. I was looking for a radio job. And as I said, somebody that I had worked with worked here and hired me. And a few months later, they offered me that person's job.
Oh my!
Yeah, I turned it down. Oh. I said no, and but I later got it after somebody else had it for a while. But I've always found it's bad karma to take the job of the person that hires you. So I said no, It just wasn't a good idea.
And you still do give weather updates on the radio. I hear your voice from time to time.
Yeah, I still do the radio with a few of the different stations. I tell you the truth, I'm not even sure exactly which ones.
I just get really excited when I hear your voice, though, on the radio, because I'm like, oh my gosh.
There he is. There he is.
I mean, I get to see him every day, but now he's in my car.
There you go. Watch out. So, yeah, but no, I enjoyed radio. I had a lot of fun in radio because when I was doing radio was total personality. I had several characters that I did.
Really?
Oh, I did.
Tell me about these characters.
Well, they were just like, one was an old man from North Dakota, Milo Heffelfinker.
What did he talk about?
He talked about politics, quite a bit about politics.
So what would that character in this day and age think about, what would he think about Donald Trump?
Well, I don't even know if that character would work in this day and age. You know, it was a different time. When I was doing this, it was 40 years ago. And I just don't know if that character would work in this day and age against what's going on now with the. It's like I was telling when somebody was asking me, what's the biggest difference? And I said, well, you know, when somebody calls and gives you trouble, and they're being unreasonable, in the old days you hung up on them. Nowadays, you can unfriend them. I mean, that's like putting a curse on them. You're unfriended. Yeah, I'm not just hanging up on you. I'm unfriending you. Yeah. So that's pretty powerful. Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah, and it's and you never just unfriend anybody. You go.
You want to make sure they know
boom,
that they're
like
unfriended.
That. It's a real tough unfriending. So that's the good part. I like that.
Oh my gosh, Dave Munsey.
I unfriend my wife 3 times a week. I always friend her back for the weekend though.
Because you have to be put up with her.
Good, good thing to do.
Because you work Monday through Friday. What other characters did you have?
Just goofy people that we did. We had, like I say, it goes back a long ways. I'm not going to do any of them, so don't
Munsey,
don't expect
please.
that. No.
How else would you commemorate 40 years?
Well, that just goes back a long ways. All of that stuff. But we had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed radio because radio, you could be so many characters, you could be so many things, and we played around a lot. We had a lot of fun.
We could have a lot of fun here too.
Absolutely. We and you know what I did was I bought as many newspapers as I could. I had as many newspapers coming to the station as I could get my hands on, and I would read them. We had a great big table in the studio, and I would lay the papers out on the and go through them, look for stories, look for interesting stuff. I didn't want the hard news of the day because they were giving that during our news segment. So I was looking for the goofy stuff, you know, and I got the National Enquirer. I got all of them. I really had a lot of fun doing radio, and then television came along. And television is it's fun, but it's in a different way. You know, we enjoy ourselves. It's a little different way of doing it. But yeah, I've had a good time. It's been a lot of fun, and hope to you know. Somebody said, "Well, what do you do on Thursday?" And I said, "Just start 41 years."
That's so exciting.
We'll see. Yeah. Good thing I started young, huh?
I know. Still got it in ya.
Let's see.
Giving us the weather updates. How's your puppy, Mr. Munsey? Any new cute pictures? Rachel wants to know.
No, I don't have any pictures with me right now, but she's doing fine. We swam again today. I thought swimming was over. I really did. I thought last weekend was going to be my last swimming day. I love to swim. I walk 3 miles in the morning, and then I come home and I swim in the pool, and she loves to swim with me. And she'd been kind of bugging me the last couple of days to go, and I hadn't wanted to because it was kind of cold on Sunday. And I jumped in this morning, and it was nice again. So I went, okay. So now we're swimming again. So
very nice.
Yeah, well, I think I might be swimming the rest of this week looking at those temperatures we had there. Yeah.
You know, speaking of the heat, I can't believe there are people outside holding up signs right now in this heat. I don't know if you know, but there's a big Planned Parenthood debate. I thought that we were going to be showing a rally that was in support of Planned Parenthood. Apparently that's not taking place here in Phoenix. Instead, here in Phoenix, there is an anti-Planned Parenthood rally taking place right now in Glendale. Rick Davis is at the scene. You want to see the live images?
Okay.
People are...
I'll see you before I leave.
Well, there were people on the street a few seconds ago. Hopefully he moves his camera. Hopefully he can hear us.
Yep, there he goes.
He does.
Yeah.
These are the live images coming out out of Planned Parenthood in Glendale.
Well, they're in the shade. There's some shade there for them. So
yeah, but there's another group over
you have
there.
to be passionate to protest. You have to be passionate to hold a sign.
Where's the group with the signs in the heat? There
Oh,
they are.
there they are. Well, they have their umbrellas.
Yeah, but it's still
they were
hot.
Smart.
Umbrellas
so
are
one's
not.
pro, one's for, one's against, I would imagine.
I am not sure. I guess that would make the most sense. But that group right there across the street, the one we're looking at on the screen right now, let me just move us out of the way. This group right here.
Yes.
They're anti-Planned Parenthood.
Okay.
I believe because we were looking at some of the signage earlier, or I was looking at some of the signage earlier before we went live, and I think someone held up a sign that said abortion hurts women, and then I think there's another sign down there that says let the baby live, but I can't really tell.
Yeah. Okay.
It's very far away.
There you go. Well, like I say, you have to, if you have passion, you will go stand in the heat, you will stand in the rain, you will stand in the snow.
Stand in anything.
You know, for for the passion that you have, and whether that passion is for or against. I think sometimes also people have somewhat of a passion, and then they see other people out there, and they go, okay, I'm going to go out there and get involved.
Yeah, there it is. There's a sign. She just picked a let the baby live. This one's abortion hurts women, defend life, defend life. There's a guy on a microphone. Let's listen in. Let's see if we can hear him. No, can't hear him at all, but he's apparently speaking into the mic. It's unclear what exactly he is saying. I guess I'll work to get more information on this Planned Parenthood event.
Well, I would imagine that he's rallying against Planned Parenthood. That's what he's saying, because he's on that side of the fence.
Quite the hot topic.
Yes, it is. It is, and it's quite a hot topic as far as the Congress is concerned, as far as the president's concerned, as far as a lot of our legislators are concerned at this time, and it's also a hot topic among women, both those that are against it and those that use those services. So, yeah, it goes very deep. It touches a lot of different people.
It's complicated. It's complicated. Well, I hope that those people outside are staying hydrated because it is very warm outside.
Very important.
I hope regardless of the side they're on, whether they're for Planned Parenthood or against, I hope they stay hydrated and everyone stays safe out there. I am going to get out of this chair and let Kinsey take over.
She's going to take over.
Momentarily.
Are you going to have me on tomorrow, my anniversary?
Yeah, it's going to be the highlight of the afternoon show.
Okay.
The whole show. It's just going to be, let's talk about weather.
I'll wear a clean shirt.
Okay, good.
Okay.
It's not about the shirt, it's about the tie, because the shirt's always white. That's what we've learned. All right, guys, continue to watch this Planned Parenthood protests, rather. What's her name? Oh, this being a girl, I just can't beat that. Hi, how are you? Thank you for being so patient.
Come on in, I don't want you to get hit by a car. That's Check. It's working. You can just look at me.
Okay.
Let me get your name, man.
Vanessa Tedesco.
Spell your last name.
Tedesco.
It's 108 degrees out here. What are you guys doing out here?
We're here to fight for the life of the unborn and to tell the world that abortion hurts women.
And what's any outcome today that brought you here?
The outcome today was the pink out that Planned Parenthood is having, and in response, we're here with the blackout to show that we are mourning for the unborn that have been lost at this center and throughout the country. Over 3,500 babies are aborted a day in this country alone, and Planned Parenthood has a big stake in that. So we are here to protest them.
How long are you going to be out here?
We'll be out here until about 4 o'clock, maybe later. We'll see.
What type of groups are you having?
We have different groups here. I'm personally, I'm here independently, but I'm also a part of Silent No More Awareness, which is a group of women, men, siblings, grandparents who are all saying that abortion has affected them, and they all have posted their stories telling them exactly how it has affected them and hurt them in generations to come.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Have someone that I can speak to? Do not? No, I need your folks are down. Okay, if I get a couple pictures and get out of here? Sure. Sure.
Yeah, that's all that way.
About 24 pounds.
There's somebody have 15 or 16. It's probably pretty heavy right now.
That's why I carry the tripod. I'll have my guy call you. I'll be on my cars.
Okay, great. Yeah.
He's sitting me out there for you guys, so I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well, we had the bigger thing. I mean,
this thing is live, so I got to. Oh. So I got the people that are against it, people that are for it, and 941 don't have a meeting supposed to. I'm rolling. You need any more? All right. Oh, there are people who are down in Tucson.
Looks like we might be losing our feed outside of the Planned Parenthood rallies in Glendale, Arizona. These are rallies that we were told were going to be happening nationally, not just here in Arizona. But I do believe I might have lost my feed, unfortunately. Let's see here if that changes. Rand Paul stole some headlines, Senator Rand Paul stole some headlines this morning from Donald Trump, who is notoriously across news screens all over the world, with his take on Planned Parenthood on the Senate floor. This was a very powerful speech. Whether you agree or not, you cannot deny the fact that this man was very passionate in regards to what he had planned to say. So I thought that this was interesting, and that I'd pull this back up for us to watch again and to revisit. He appeared later that day, today, on Gretchen Carlson, and kind of regurgitated some of it, but I will show you that if I'm allowed to. Let me see if I can get permission to do that. But here is Rand Paul, Senator Rand Paul, earlier today, speaking against the continuing budget of Planned Parenthood. Let's see here.
That famous line from Cool Hand Luke, what we have here is a failure to communicate. What we have here in Congress is a failure to legislate, a failure to exert congressional authority. What we have here is a failure to use our leverage. What we have here is a failure to use the power of the purse. Conservatives across America are unhappy, and rightly so. We were told that when we took over Congress, when Republicans were elected to Congress, that things would be different. That if voters put us in charge, we would right the ship. We would stop the deficits. And here we are with another continuing resolution. What is a continuing resolution? It is a continuation of the deficit spending of the past. It is a continuation of the waste. It is a continuation of the duplication. What is a continuing resolution? It is a steaming pile of the same old, same old. Let me be clear. A continuing resolution is not a good thing. It is more of the status quo. It is a warmed over version of yesterday's failures. It is an abdication of congressional authority. It is an abdication of congressional power. Let us at least be honest. With a continuing resolution, no waste will be cut, no spending will be cut, no regulations will be stopped, and the debt will continue to mount. We are told that we cannot win, that we need 60 votes to defund anything. But perhaps there is an alternate future where courage steps up and saves the day. All spending is set to expire automatically. This is the perfect time to turn the tables, to tell the other side that they will need 60 votes to affirmatively spend any money. You see, it doesn't have to be 60 votes to stop things. All spending will expire, and only those programs for which we can get 60 votes should go forward. What would that mean? That would mean an elimination of waste, an elimination of duplication, an elimination of bad things that we spend money on. If we had the courage, we could use the Senate's supermajority rules to stop wasteful spending. If we had the courage, we could force the other side to come up with 60 votes to fund things like Planned Parenthood. The budget is loaded with nonsense and waste. Some will say our job is to govern, to preside. But to preside over what? To preside over a mountain of new debt? To be the same as the other side? To continue to add debt after debt? Our debt will consume us if we continue to preside over the status quo. It is as if we're on the Titanic and just simply reshuffling the chairs. A continuing resolution continues the spending of wasteful money. I can go on and on about what we're wasting money on. I'll tell you of a few. We spent $300,000 last year studying whether or not Japanese quail are more sexually promiscuous on cocaine. I think we could poll the audience and save money. These things should never have money spent on, but if you do a continuing resolution, it will continue. We spent several $100,000 studying whether or not we can relieve stress in Vietnamese villagers by having them watch American television reruns. I don't know about you, but I don't want one penny of taxpayer dollar going to this ridiculous stuff. If we pass a continuing resolution, no reform will occur. We spent $800,000 in the last couple years developing a televised cricket league for Afghanistan. $800,000. Do you know how many people have a television in Afghanistan? 1 in 10,000 people, and I don't care if they've all got TVs. It's ridiculous that our money, which we don't even have, we have to borrow it from China to send it to Afghanistan. If you pass a continuing resolution, you're agreeing to continue this nonsense. We spent $150,000 last year on yoga classes for federal employees. So not only do we pay them nearly 1.5 times as much as the private sector employees, we give them yoga classes. If you pass a continuing resolution, this goes on and on. Nothing will change. The status quo will continue, and we will continue to spend ourselves into oblivion. We spent $250,000 last year inviting 24 kids from Pakistan to go to space camp in Alabama. We borrow money from China to send it to Pakistan. It's crazy, it's ridiculous, and it should stop. We have the power to stop it. Congress has the power to spend money or not spend money, and yet we roll down and we roll over and we say, it must continue. We don't have the votes to stop it. Nonsense. The other side doesn't have the vote to continue the spending if we would stand up and challenge them. We spent $500,000 last year or the year before developing a menu for when we colonize Mars. We sent a bunch of college students to Hawaii to study this. $5,000 apiece we paid them. They got 2 weeks, all expenses paid in Hawaii. And do you know what a bunch of college kids came up with for the menu for Mars? Pizza. This is where your money's going. I could go on hundreds and hundreds of programs. If we do not exert the power of the purse, this continues. We should attach to all of the spending bills, all 12 individual spending bills, not glommed together, we should attach hundreds of instructions, thousands of instructions Now, some of the media have said, well, those would be riders on appropriation bills. Exactly. That's the power of the purse. If you object to the president writing regulations without our authority, Congress should defund the regulations. Congress should instruct him on Obamacare, what we object to. Congress should instruct him that we don't want money spent on Planned Parenthood. Hundreds and hundreds of instructions should be written into every bill and passed and sent to them. Would we win all of these battles? Do we have the power to win every battle and defund everything we want? No. But you know what we start out with? Our negotiating position right now is we start out with we defund nothing. Why don't we start out with a negotiating position that we defund everything that's objectionable, all the wasteful spending, all the duplicative spending? Let's defund it all. And if there has to be a negotiation, let's start from defunding it all and see where we get. But it would take courage because you would have to let spending expire. If you're not willing to let the spending expire and start anew, you have no leverage. The power of the purse is only there if you have courage. You must have the courage of convictions to say enough's enough, that the debt is a greater threat to us than letting spending expire. Now, some will report on this speech and say, oh, he wants to shut down government. No, I don't. I just want to exert the power of the purse, and that means spending must expire. But I'm all for renewing the spending, but let's only renew the spending that makes sense. We have the power of the purse if we choose to exert it. Look at the mountain of debt. Look at the debt that continues to be added up. We have not been doing our job. The way we are supposed to spend money in Congress is 12 individual appropriation bills. They've passed out of committee. Why aren't they presented on the floor? The Democrats have filibustered the only one presented. Let's present every one of them and let the public know, let everyone in America know that it's Democrats filibustering the spending bills. It's Democrats who desire to shut down government. It's Democrats who desire not to have any restrictions on where the money's spent. It's the Democrats who are saying, we don't want to end wasteful spending. We don't want to end any spending. We don't want any controls over spending. We want to continue the status quo. But we should not be complicit with them. We have allowed this to go on for too long. It threatens the very heart of the republic. It threatens our very foundations to continue to borrow $1 million a minute. It's time that we stood up. It's time that we took a stand and said, enough's enough. When's the last time we did it in the appropriate fashion? When is the last time Congress passed each of the individual appropriation bills with instructions on how to spend the money? 2005, a decade ago. It's been a decade. In the last decade, we've added nearly $10 trillion in new debt. It's time to take a stand. I, for one, have had enough. I've had enough. I'm not going to vote for a continuing resolution. A continuing resolution is simply a continuation of the mounting debt. I, for one, will not do it. A continuing resolution is retreat. It is announcing your defeat in advance. What we should do is take a stand. We should say to the other side, in the Senate, it requires a supermajority. What does that mean? 60 votes to pass spending. What would happen? You would have spending that is controversial, like Planned Parenthood, would fall away. They can ask for private donations. Good luck on that. You wouldn't find things being funded that are controversial. What would happen is there would no longer be funding for wasteful and duplicative projects. You know that we listed these a couple years ago, and I think we had $7 billion worth of just duplication. Did we fix it? No. Every year the president, even this president, puts forward $10, $15, $20 billion worth of programs that could be eliminated. Do they ever get eliminated? No, because Congress is dysfunctional and we continue to pass a continuing resolution, which means we do nothing to exert the power of the purse. Congress is a shadow of what it once was. Madison said that we would have co-equal branches and that we would pit ambition against ambition. We no longer do that. Congress is a withering shadow. It's a shadow of what it once was. Congress has no power, exerts no power, and we walk and we live in the shadow of a presidency that is growing larger and larger and larger. The president's not afraid. He says he's got his pen and his phone. So he is writing and creating law. One of our founding fathers, one of our philosophers they looked to was Montesquieu. And Montesquieu said, when the executive begins to legislate, a form of tyranny will ensue. That's what we've got now. We have executive tyranny. It's not just this president, though. It's been going on for a while. Probably for 100 years, we've been allowing more and more power to accumulate in the hands of the presidency. What we need is a bipartisan taking back of that power. We need Congress to stand up on its own 2 feet and say, enough's enough. We are reclaiming the power of the purse, and we are going to do whatever is necessary to get rid of the wasteful spending, the duplicative spending, the offensive spending. And we are going to do what the American people want, and that is to spend only what comes in. But I will tell you, I, for one, will oppose this continuing resolution, and I recommend that everybody in America call their congressman and say, we're tired of the mounting debt. We want you to stand up. We want you to stand up and say enough's enough. Let the funding expire and make the other side come up with 60 votes to spend the money. It's time we took a stand. I hope we will. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, and that is my... Were you coming to say hi? No. Mike. I felt Mikey quickly approaching, quickly leaving. It's fine. It's fine. I'm not offended. I thought that was very interesting from Rand Paul today. I especially was interested in the birds, cocaine, pigeons aspect. Who, why? John McCain, Senator McCain's good at giving us lists of these crazy things that they spend money on. I do have a lot more Planned Parenthood stuff for you, though. Let me pull up some of the stories I found in our catalog. They're like, Kinsey's back. She's slow. She's taking too long. But I found a couple of different sound bites and visuals, quotes from today's hearing. Let's see, where's my full package from here we go. This is from Fox National.
We have been extremely cooperative.
Yeah, and I just cited that.
Tension on Capitol Hill. The head of the House Oversight Committee, Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz, accusing Planned Parenthood of misspending more than $40 million in federal funds on everything from lavish travel to themed parties and an expensive Manhattan office.
What I don't like, what I don't want to tolerate, what I don't want to become numb to is wasting those taxpayer dollars.
The congressional grilling comes after 10 secretly recorded videos surfaced, allegedly showing Planned Parenthood employees negotiating over the price of organs and tissues from aborted fetuses. Planned Parenthood's president, Cecile Richards, questioned the authenticity of those videos.
The outrageous accusations leveled against Planned Parenthood based on heavily doctored videos are offensive and categorically untrue.
As conservatives continue threats to defund Planned Parenthood, its president argued most of the federal funding it receives is reimbursement under Medicaid and other programs for health care services like birth control and cancer screenings. Richards made it clear no federal funds pay for abortion services except under very limited circumstances permitted by law, and Democrats stood with her.
Republicans are doubling down on their war against women.
And while the federal government remains open for now, House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer said he fears the ongoing flap over Planned Parenthood could cause a shutdown come December. In Washington, Joel Waldman, Fox News.
Thank you so much to Joel. Let's check out some of these other packages I've pulled. This is a Texas Planned Parenthood protest. Let's see what these visuals are.
Stand up, fight back! Stand up, fight back!
Similar to the one we saw here in Glendale, and individuals in pink.
Stand up, fight back! When our health care is under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back! When our youth are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back! When our youth are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back!
What do we want?
Care!
When do we want it?
Now! Show me what solidarity looks like!
This is what solidarity looks like!
Show me what solidarity looks like!
This is what solidarity looks like!
Show me what solidarity looks like!
This is what solidarity looks like!
Show me what solidarity looks like!
This is what solidarity looks like!
Mara Posada, and that's M-A-R-A, and the last name is Posada, P-O-S-A-D-A.
Can you start off by explaining, actually, what's your title?
Oh, my title is Director of Communications, Planned Parenthood, South Texas. This funding, it's really the women, the men, the teens that rely on us for basic preventive health care. None of these funds go towards abortion care. All of this is for preventive health care. And these are the people that end up losing their access. And there's already such a limited access to health care. So it is at stake. You know, lives are at stake here. Women who come to Planned Parenthood have discovered that they have breast cancer, discovered that they have cervical cancer. For many women, Planned Parenthood is their only source of health care. So lives are at stake here.
The battle that's going
United, we'll never be divided. Standing united, we'll never be divided.
Seems like a much more lively protest than the one we saw in Glendale, Arizona. This is out of Texas.
Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Ain't no power. What do we want now? What do we want? What do we want?
Here is a comment from Rep. Chavez in regards to Planned Parenthood. This I pulled from Fox National.
I don't think we should have to fund it. But the discretionary part of the funding is about $60 million. In the last reporting period, Planned Parenthood collected $100 million more than they actually spent. So why should federal taxpayers have to supplement their political activities? I just don't think it should have to happen.
Tell me about the $200,000 you gave to the Ballot Initiative Strategy Center. What was that for? That was in 2013 as well.
So I'm not familiar with that exact payment, but I'm
Well,
happy
you gave
to
him
get-
$200,000. If you don't know, you're running this
Sir,
organization.
sir,
Let me, no,
excuse
hold
me,
on.
sir.
No, hold on. Let me list out what their goal is. Their mantra is, quote, envisioning a future where progressives change the game and use ballot measures as a political and civic engagement tool for victory. And you gave them $200,000.
Sir, I run an organization that has a budget of roughly $200 million. And so when you pull out one figure out of the last 5 years, I'm trying to be responsive. It's important to, and perhaps you're not aware that there have been many efforts in states over the last several years to pass ballot initiatives that restrict women's access to birth control and reproductive health care.
But you
So
also
we've
use-
absolutely been involved in ballot initiative measures that have been introduced by people
This
who
is
want to
why I don't
restrict
think you
women's
need,
health care.
if you want to be a private entity, be a private entity. But you don't need federal dollars in order to do this.
I don't use federal dollars to do that, sir.
You do to run the organization. Planned
Excuse
Parenthood has given Planned Parenthood Action Fund more than $22 million to exercise to involve in their lobbying expenditures and their advocacy efforts.
None of the dollars that you are discussing are federal dollars, and the Planned Parenthood Federation of America receives almost no federal dollars. I think at this point only $21,000 for a clinical trial network.
It goes to the
for
same
birth
organization,
control.
and you just separate all that out. Let me go to
We
the
are
last point.
highly accountable. I'm happy, again, I think we've been extremely forthcoming with all of our
Let
documents.
me go to the next one.
Will the gentleman yield?
No, I won't. The Planned Parenthood and its lobbying arm, Planned Parenthood Action Fund, it controls two 527 organizations that have their own political activities, Planned Parenthood Votes and Planned Parenthood Action Fund PAC. Do they receive money from Planned Parenthood to conduct these activities?
The Planned Parenthood Action Fund is a totally separate corporation, receives no federal dollars whatsoever.
What about the management? Who manages it? Do you manage it?
It's managed by a team of people who are employed by the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Are you one of those that helps manage it? I don't directly manage it, no, sir.
Do you help manage it?
Some of my time is allocated to it, but I do not oversee that. I oversee.
In 2013, you were listed as a shared employee. In fact, you were compensated with $31,000 to help run that organization, correct?
You asked me, excuse me, sir, but you asked me if I ran the organization.
Or do you help run it?
Some of my time is allocated to the Planned Parenthood Action Fund, which is required by law, and we meet all of the legal requirements.
And so you also involved in the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. If you could help us understand what the duties are for your $31,000 of contribution, my guess is you running the mothership here, when you show up and want to have something done, it's probably done. Does Planned Parenthood control any organizations that lobby?
The Planned Parenthood Action Fund is a separate organization that has its own board and its own fundraising and no federal employees.
Shared list, shared emails, shared assets. This is the concern. Tell me about
I just want to make sure you understood my statement, since I know that we're talking about federal funds. Zero federal funds are related to the Planned Parenthood Action Fund.
It's the commingling that bothers us. Every dollar that you get, no, hold on. Every dollar that you get in from federal dollars means you don't necessarily have to allocate it for these particular assets. So that's what we're concerned about. I've gone over time. I need to show this last slide. This one I don't understand. And in the case of Dana, when she came to Planned Parenthood, did she get a mammogram?
No, she was referred for a mammogram. Absolutely.
And that's part of the challenge, is that you don't do mammograms. So if you... Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
You don't do mammograms, correct? There's like one or two places that doesn't, but you don't do mammograms.
If you would give me one moment to explain. Planned Parenthood is a women's health center, just like where I go for my breast exams every year. If you need a mammogram, you're referred to a radiological center, and that's how women actually receive their care. And we provide breast exams I can get you the numbers of how many hundreds of thousands of women received breast exams at Planned Parenthood last year. Has nothing to do with,
here's
you
the
created this slide, I
I'm
have no
trying to
idea
wrap
what
it
it is.
Well, it's the reduction over the course of years in pink. That's the reduction in the breast exams, and the red is the increase in the abortions. That's what's going on in your organization.
This is a slide that has never been shown to me before. I'm happy to look at it, but it absolutely does not reflect what's happening at Planned Parenthood.
You're going to deny that if we take those numbers out of your report?
That you've just shown me that no one has ever provided us before. We've provided you all the information about everything, all the services that Planned Parenthood provides, and it doesn't feel like we're trying to get to the truth here. You just showed me this. I'm happy to look at it.
I pulled those numbers directly out of your corporate reports.
Oh, excuse me. My loggers are informing me that the source of this is actually Americans United for Life, which is an anti-abortion group. So I would check your source.
Then we will get to the bottom of the truth of that. We will now recognize Mr. Cummings.
Wow, now I've just pulled video from our catalog of videos. That's limited, but I would absolutely be fascinated in seeing this unedited in all, full on. I don't know if you got to see that earlier this morning with Samia. Let me know in the chat room. But I think that them sparring back and forth is absolutely fascinating and interesting to see the way she handles this, the pressure. I think she's handled it pretty well so far, honestly. Let's see here. I've got a couple more Planned Parenthood videos, or Planned Parenthood related videos. Let me pull those up for you. Interesting feedback from Tess in the chat room. Tess says, this woman is evil. That's the only way she could lead such a killing machine as Planned Parenthood. That's feedback from one of our chatters.
All right, guys, here we go. Everybody down. Go. Watch the center camera.
One in 5 women in this country has sought care from a Planned Parenthood health center. And they trust us because our rigorous healthcare standards have been developed with the nation's top medical experts over our 99-year history. There's been a great deal of misinformation circulated about Planned Parenthood recently, and I want to be absolutely clear at the outset. The federal funding that Planned Parenthood receives allows our doctors and clinicians at our health centers to provide birth control, cancer screenings, and testing and treatment for sexually transmitted infections. Now, while the federal policy, in my opinion, discriminates against low-income women, no federal funds pay for abortion services at Planned Parenthood or anywhere else, except in the very limited circumstances allowed by law.
Interesting. And Alfredo says, and he's acknowledging Tess's comment about Miss Richards being an evil woman. I don't know who this lady is, but that hearing made her look like a victim. Interesting feedback, because she did get hit so hard with so many intense questions and content she clearly wasn't prepared for. So interesting feedback from Alfredo that no matter what the title is, the way that these individuals came down on her today made you squirm in your seats. I'm squirming in my seat watching some of it. We are waiting for
Federal funding pays, Medicaid funding and Title X pays for very specific preventive care services, as we've discussed.
So,
and federal funding does not pay for abortion
so
except
what
in
I'm
very
trying
limited
to say is,
circumstances. We have a very clear policy, which I'm happy to read to you, about how we allow patients to make fetal tissue donations. As I said in my letter to Congress, I've asked our chief medical officer and our medical team to review all the work we do, and again, it's very limited in fetal tissue donation, to ensure that if there are any things that we could be doing better, we would like to do that.
I thought I'd pulled another video, and perhaps I'm going to have to go find it. But oh, here we go. This is the man that wants to take over for John Boehner.
Our challenge here right now, you watch those videos, they're horrific. But the problem is the president won't watch them. The country hasn't seen them. And when we look at Hillary Clinton's numbers today, America says they distrust her. Why? Because they found out the truth about her. And the only way they found that truth about it was the Benghazi Select Committee dug into it and was be able to get the facts. If we were be able to set up a select committee on Planned Parenthood, get the facts, lay it out to the American public, we would win. Look, I like to fight, and I like to fight to win. That's wrong. Regardless of where you stand on this issue, you want to have the facts. If you are an elected official, you should get all the information, even if you disagree with what they're going to give to you, because why do you want to base something on something that is false? Get the facts and make an educated and honest decision.
All right, I think this is a good transition into John Boehner's replacement. This is a Fox National package.
Well, in the near term, this would seem to reduce the likelihood of a government shutdown this week, but this also has longer-term implications for Congress and for the GOP.
Just days after an apparently relieved but emotional John Boehner stunned Washington with news that he will turn over his speaker's gavel at the end of next month, he unloaded on a group of fellow Republicans who have long questioned his leadership.
Absolutely, they're unrealistic. But the Bible says, beware of false prophets.
So what's next for Boehner? Probably relying on Democratic votes this week to pass a spending bill that will prevent a government shutdown, even though many Republicans are insisting that controversial funding for Planned Parenthood be stripped out. And conservatives fear that other compromises will follow before Boehner leaves, which is why they wanted him out in the first place.
We told people, give us the Senate and things would be different. We told them back in 2010, give us the House, things would be different. And things are not that different.
But what both wings of the party seem to agree on, the odds-on favorite at this point to replace Boehner is House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy of California. It would be a very fast rise for someone who has been in Congress for less than 9 years.
I don't think there's much doubt Kevin will be the next Speaker of the House, and he should be. Frankly, he's had a brilliant career, is well positioned.
I think it's fair to say that Kevin has the inside track for the position, being our leader and so forth. I think the important question is, will things change? Will they change for the better, or we simply replace Mr. Boehner with somebody else who will do the same thing?
Well, that is the most critical question for House conservatives. At this point, though, we don't know who else is going to put themselves forward for Speaker. It could be a real battle. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
Interesting stuff. Thank you so much, Doug Luzader. Let's see. Let's stay in line with some political packages. I'm seeing a lot of Donald Trump mentions in the chat right now, so I'm going to give you this Fox National package on Trump's tax plan.
It will provide major tax relief for middle income and for most other Americans. There will be a major tax reduction. It'll simplify the tax code.
Donald Trump says his plan to cut taxes will make America great again and balance the budget. He would reduce the current 7 income tax brackets to 3 brackets and cut rates to 25%, 20%, and 10%. Individuals earning less than $25,000 a year or couples earning less than $50,000 would pay 0. That would increase the block of workers who do not pay income taxes from 38% to 50%. He'd also slash business taxes to 15% to spur growth and eliminate the so-called death tax, marriage penalty, and alternative minimum tax. He would pay for it by eliminating most deductions for the very rich, raising taxes on hedge funds and private equity profits known as carried interest, and crack down on corporations which pay fewer taxes by moving their headquarters and jobs overseas.
We have to make much better deals, we have to negotiate much harder, and we've got to make our economy strong.
There was plenty of positive reaction, but not everyone is in favor of this plan.
It is like a farmer's field for growing loopholes. It has these remarkable sort of areas in which there is no detail and which there is clearly going to be a gigantic, load of misbehavior and unintended consequences.
Trump's also taken an extraordinary position in favor of universal health care, which puts him at odds with the GOP on one of the biggest fights of the Obama era.
Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say. I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not. Everybody's going to be taken care of much better than they're taken care of now.
The uninsured person is going to be taken care of.
They're going to be taken care of.
How?
I would make a deal with existing hospitals to take care of people.
Today he weighed in on unemployment numbers, calling current figures phony and false.
I actually saw a number of 42% unemployment. 42%! And it could be.
A new NBC Wall Street Journal poll now shows Trump and Ben Carson virtually tied. Marco Rubio and Carly Fiorina are tied for third, followed by Jeb Bush, John Kasich, and Ted Cruz.
Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker dropped out of the race exactly 1 week ago tonight, and this evening both Bobby Jindal and Chris Christie are campaigning in the first caucus state, and tomorrow Chris Christie will be endorsed by 6 of Republican Governor Terry Branstad's top Iowa GOP donors, a sign that Christie plans to make a big play for the first caucus state. In Alden, Carl Cameron, Fox News.
And I found a package that I should have played for you, but I didn't know it existed. It looks just like a soundbite. This is Kevin McCarthy announcing his intention to replace John Boehner.
The change that happens when you become speaker is you set the culture. This is going to be a generational change. And you know what's happening across this country. We need to be closer to the people we represent. We need for them to believe once again that this is their government, that they're in charge, that we serve them. Now, it's not easy and it won't happen overnight, but that's my mission. This government is devised to be compromised. You can't get 100% of whatever you want. But you know what you can get? You can put the idea out there. You win the idea, you win the vote. And you want the system to be able to work. We have the majority in the House. We have the majority in the Senate. We should be able to get a good conservative compromise that solves the problem. Trey Gowdy is one of my best friends. I don't know if he would do it, but I think all three individuals who are running can do the job very, very well. I stay out of those races so the conference can pick who they think is best, that they can work individually to lay out their plan and be able to win it. But any of them would do a very good job.
I'm Team Trey Gowdy for sure. Let's kind of circle back with what a nice screen grab. What a nice little freeze frame we have there. Let's circle back now, and this is in regards to what Rand Paul was speaking on earlier, although Alfredo did tweet me the most amazing photo that I'm going to show you right now. While we're on the topic, I might as well show you. This made me laugh. Viewer Alfredo. I had to retweet it. This is the package we're about to watch. Congress, their budget battle. That's what Rand Paul was talking to us earlier when he gave us that amazing speech and discussed the cocaine pigeons, you know, that we didn't know existed, or the old people that are watching American reruns of Full House to see if it calms them down. Well, Alfredo gave me some Photoshop action right there, which I truly appreciate, as I am Team Harry Styles and named my dog after him. So thank you for that, Alfredo. But let's go back to our news packages and see, take a look at this Congress budget battle package.
The U.S. Senate is expected to give final approval today on a spending bill that would prevent the government from shutting down later this week. This after senators voted Monday to end a filibuster.
We are seeing positive movement on creating a bipartisan budget, which is what we all want to see happen.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell claims the bill, which would fund the government at current levels through December 11th, is the only viable way forward in the short term. But some of his Republican colleagues disagree.
I'm steadfastly opposed to a continuing resolution because it continues all the bad spending and the debt.
The stopgap spending measure is aimed at buying time for negotiators to reach a longer-term budget agreement that lasts through September 2016.
Who's putting in place these interim budgets? It's not the Budget Committee. It's not the appropriations process. That would be regular order. That's what all of us are in favor of. That's what we promised the people. Instead, now you get these crazy budgets that are just being thrown about.
Some conservative lawmakers are upset because the bill does not defund Planned Parenthood. The health organization has been under fire since a series of videos were released that appear to show officials discussing how they sell tissue from aborted fetuses to medical researchers.
We should use our constitutional power of the purse to decline to give $500 million of taxpayer money to Planned Parenthood, a private organization. It's not part of the government. It's currently under multiple criminal investigations.
The House is expected to vote on the spending bill by Thursday's midnight deadline. Kelly Wright, Fox News.
Thank you so much, Kelly Wright. And I've got some more general election news for you. Hillary Clinton. I'm very much looking forward to the Democratic debate because I feel like we're not hearing from any of the candidates. I really think I might like Martin O'Malley, but we haven't heard anything from him. Joe Biden can determine that he wants to come in probably 45 minutes before the debate and make his way on the stage. So it will be very interesting once we actually start to see some of these debates on the Democratic side. And I am, as Troy Hayden likes to point out, a pretty conservative person. However, I love politics. I love this season, and I like to see people's point of views and how they break down their thoughts on and their opinions on some of these in their stances on some of these issues. So, yeah. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm happy to bring you some Democratic news, although with Hillary Clinton it always seems to be some type of controversy.
In a lengthy interview on Meet the Press, Hillary Clinton said it was her lawyers who reviewed the 63,000 emails on her private server and deleted 30,000 of them.
When my attorneys conducted this exhaustive process, I did not participate. When that process finished, my attorney said, well, what do you want us to do with all these personal emails? I said, well, I don't need to keep them.
At one point, Clinton's language evoked the 90s when she decried a vast right-wing conspiracy aimed at her husband.
Can you respond to an alternative explanation that has sort of
another conspiracy theory?
You wanted to make it a little more difficult for congressional investigators to subpoena your government emails and a little more difficult for Freedom of Information Act requests. Is that a fair theory or no?
It's totally ridiculous. That never crossed my mind.
Former President Clinton cast the email controversy as a creation of Republican activists and a campaign press corps that, unlike the State Department press corps, thrives on scandal.
The other party doesn't want to run against her, and if they do, they'd like her as mangled up as possible. At the beginning of the year, she was the most admired person in public life, and she earned it. Why? Because she was being covered by people who reported on what she was doing.
Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders returned to his alma mater, the University of Chicago, as the latest Fox News poll of likely Democratic primary voters finds Clinton's lead over Sanders shrinking. Clinton's favorability rating stands at 38%, with half of women voters rating her negatively as the email scandal drags on.
And she just can't seem to shake this, can she?
No, and I mean, it really is going to stick with her for the entire campaign in one form or another, certainly through the end of this year.
Separately, CNN announced its criteria for the first Democratic primary debate, set for October 13th in Las Vegas, and the rules make clear that if Vice President Biden jumps into the race by that evening, he would be eligible to participate in that debate. In Washington, James Rosen, Fox News.
Yeah, they're just like, please just decide to run for president. You can decide day of. We'll have a podium just patiently waiting for you, an extra podium. We got plenty of podiums in the back. But I wonder if it's specifically Biden or if it's anyone. I think that's interesting. Rachel says Bernie creeps me out. Tess says he's kind of a goof. So I think Bernie and Hillary's exchange will be especially interesting because they have waited so long for this, and they have been head-to-head. Martin O'Malley, you probably don't even know who I'm talking about. He's been so left out of the coverage on the Democrat side. You know, the one time he really did get a camera in his face, it was because he showed up at one of Donald Trump's buildings and held a press conference in front of one of Donald Trump's buildings. And you think, that's a pretty good idea. That's a pretty smart plan. Although I guess they could only come up with one because really that's all we've heard from him, unfortunately. Do I have any other stories I want to share for you now, or do I want to wait until the 6:30 to 9 hour our 6:30 to 9 show, where hopefully you will join me? I've got a lot of interesting stories for 6:30 to 9, including Texas Veteran Suicide March, a gay student in Tennessee that was denied homecoming. Let's see what else we have here. Pet cemetery lawsuit. That's right up my alley. Joyce Mitchell sentenced. ID cards for undocumented workers, and you can bet I'm going to drag John Hook into that conversation. He's got a lot to say about that. A pastor growing food for the homeless. I got a lot of interesting stories out of Georgia today too. Parents are upset that their children are being taught Islam in school. So yeah, I've got those stories. We're gonna spend some time with John Hook, revisit his newsmaker as well, and that's gonna be our 6:30 to 9 show. But let's see, Mike pulled some video for me. Oh yeah, Obama this afternoon talking about Syria, and this is at the Leaders Summit, and he's talking about countering Islam, not Islam, countering ISIS. This is what he's talking about. He's talking about fighting ISIS and how how he plans to execute that. And this is kind of one of the, we hear a lot of talk about how it's taken care of, but this is one of those instances where we actually hear him break down a plan. And I've got an hour of this for you.
Our coalition has grown to some 60 nations, including our Arab partners. Together, we welcome 3 new countries to our coalition, Nigeria, Tunisia, and Malaysia. Nearly 24 nations are in some way contributing to the military campaign, and we salute and are grateful for all the service members from our respective nations who are performing with skill and determination. In Iraq, ISIL continues to hold Mosul, Fallujah, and Ramadi. But Iraqi forces, backed by coalition air power, have liberated towns across Kirkuk province and Tikrit. ISIL has now lost nearly a third of the populated areas in Iraq that it had controlled. 18 countries are now helping to train and support Iraqi forces, including Sunni volunteers who want to push ISIL out of their communities. And Prime Minister Abadi, I want to note the enormous sacrifices being made by Iraqi forces and the Iraqi people in this fight every day. In Syria, which has obviously been a topic of significant discussion during the course of this General Assembly, we have seen support from Turkey that has allowed us to intensify our air campaign there. ISIL has been pushed back from large sections of northeastern Syria, including the key city of Tal Abyad, putting new pressure on its stronghold of Raqqa. And ISIL has been cut off from almost the entire region bordering Turkey, which is a critical step towards stemming the flow of foreign terrorist fighters. Following the Special Security Council meeting I chaired last year, more than 20 additional countries have passed or strengthened laws to disrupt the flow of foreign terrorist fighters. We share more information, and we are strengthening border controls. We've prevented would-be fighters from reaching the battlefield and returning to threaten our countries. But this remains a very difficult challenge, and today we're going to focus on how we can do more together. In conjunction with this summit, the United States and our partners are also taking new steps to crack down on the illicit finance that ISIL uses to pay its fighters, fund its operations, and launch attacks. Our military and intelligence efforts are not going to succeed alone. They have to be matched by political and economic progress to address the conditions that ISIL has exploited in order to take root. Prime Minister Abadi is taking important steps to build a more inclusive and accountable government while working to stabilize areas taken back from ISIL, and our nations need to help Prime Minister Abadi in these efforts. In Syria, as I said yesterday, defeating ISIL requires, I believe, a new leader and an inclusive government that unites the Syrian people in the fight against terrorist groups. This is going to be a complex process, and as I've said before, we are prepared to work with all countries, including Russia and Iran, to find a political mechanism in which it is possible to begin a transition process. As ISIL's tentacles reach into other regions, the United States is increasing our counterterrorism cooperation with partners like Tunisia. We're boosting our support to Nigeria and its neighbors as they push back against Boko Haram, which has pledged allegiance to ISIL. And we're creating a new clearinghouse to better coordinate the world's support for countries' counterterrorism programs so that our efforts are as effective as possible. Ultimately, however, it is not going to be enough to defeat ISIL in the battlefield. We have to prevent it from radicalizing, recruiting, and inspiring others to violence in the first place. And this means defeating their ideology. Ideologies are not defeated with guns, they're defeated by better ideas, a more attractive and compelling vision. Building on our White House summit earlier this year and summits around the world since then, we're moving ahead together in several areas. We're stepping up our efforts to discredit ISIL's propaganda, especially online. The UAE's new messaging hub, the Sawab Center, is exposing ISIL for what it is, which is a band of terrorists that kills innocent Muslim men, women, and children. We're working to lift up the voices of Muslim scholars, clerics, and others, including ISIL defectors, who courageously stand up to ISIL and its warped interpretations of Islam. We recognize that we have to confront the economic grievances that exist in some of the areas that ISIL seeks to exploit. Poverty does not cause terrorism, but as we've seen across the Middle East and North Africa, when people, especially young people, are impoverished and hopeless and feel humiliated by injustice and corruption, that can fuel resentments that terrorists exploit, which is why sustainable development, creating opportunity and dignity, particularly for youth, is part of countering violent extremism. We recognize we also have to address the political grievances that ISIL exploits. I've said this before, when human rights are denied and citizens have no opportunity to redress their grievances peacefully, it feeds terrorist propaganda that justifies violence. Likewise, when political opponents are treated like terrorists and thrown in jail, it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So the real path to lasting stability and progress is not less democracy. I believe it is more democracy in terms of free speech and freedom of religion, rule of law, strong civil societies. All that has to play a part in countering violent extremism. And finally, we recognize that our best partners in protecting vulnerable people from succumbing to violent extremist ideologies are the communities themselves. Families, friends, neighbors, clerics, faith leaders who love and care for these young people. Remember that violent extremism is not unique to any one faith, so no one should be profiled or targeted simply because of their faith. Yet, we have to recognize that ISIL is targeting Muslim communities around the world, especially individuals who may be disillusioned or confused or wrestling with their identities. And in all of our countries, we have to continue to build true partnerships with Muslim communities based on trust and cooperation so that they can help protect their loved ones from becoming radicalized. And this cannot just be the work of government. It is up to all of us. We have to commit ourselves to build diverse, tolerant, inclusive societies that reject anti-Muslim and anti-immigrant bigotry that creates the divisions, the fear, and the resentments upon which extremists can prey. I'm pleased that here at this summit, businesses, including high-tech companies, are investing funds, training, and technological expertise to support innovative programs that push back on violent extremism. Cities around the world are joining together to build more resilient communities. Researchers are partnering to share best practices, knowing what works and what we can do better. And as we saw yesterday, young people from around the world are participating in their own summit. And these young people, many of them Muslim, are coming together and using their talents and technology to push back on ISIL's propaganda, especially online, and to protect their brothers and sisters from recruitment. These young people are an inspiration and give us hope. And I'd ask everyone to join me in thanking all the young people who are here today. So, to conclude, we face a grave challenge. We have to be clear-eyed about the fact that this is very hard work. We have individuals here like Prime Minister Abadi and President Buhari who are on the front lines. And this is not going to be turned around overnight, because it is not just a military campaign that we are involved in. There are profound changes taking place in the Middle East and North Africa. There are problems that have built up over decades that are expressing themselves and manifesting themselves in organizations like ISIL. Even if we were to wipe out the entire cadre of ISIL leadership, we would still have some of these forces at work. But ultimately, I am optimistic. In Iraq and in Syria, ISIL is surrounded by communities, countries, and a broad international coalition committed to its destruction. We've seen that ISIL can be defeated on the battlefield, where there is sound organization and a government and military that is coordinating with this coalition and with our diplomatic efforts. And here at this summit, we're seeing a new global movement to counter the violent extremism that ISIL needs to survive. Like terrorists and tyrants throughout history, ISIL will eventually lose, because it has nothing to offer but suffering and death. And when you look at the reports of those who are laboring under their control, it is a stark and brutal life that does not appeal to people over the long term. So we will ultimately prevail, because we are guided by a stronger, better vision, a commitment to the security, opportunity, and dignity of every human being. But it will require diligence, focus, and sustained effort by all of us. And I am grateful that all of you who are already participating are committed to this work. With that, I want to give the floor to our Secretary General, His Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon.
Thank you, Your Excellency President Obama, for your strong leadership and very inspiring and visionary statement today. And I'd like to also thank you for hosting this very important Leaders Summit this morning, after a very successful and meaningful White House Summit meeting on countering violent extremism in February in Washington, D.C. Since then, this process has sparked serious conversations around the world to address the menace at its roots. Violent extremist groups, including Daesh and Boko Haram, pose a direct threat to international security, mercilessly target women and girls, and undermine universal values of peace, justice, and human dignity. That threat is growing. Our most recent data shows a 70% of increase in foreign terrorist fighters from over 100 countries to regions in conflict. Addressing this challenge goes to the heart of the mission of the United Nations, and it requires a unified response. We know violent extremism flourishes when human rights are violated, aspirations for inclusion are ignored, and too many people, especially the world's young people, with their hopes and dreams, lack prospects and meaning in their lives. We also know the crucial ingredients for success: good governance, the rule of law, open pluralist societies, quality education, and decent jobs, full respect for human rights. Security-focused counterterrorism measures are crucial. Yet we can no longer have such efforts backfire by playing into the hands of those we are seeking to defeat, or by further alienating already marginalized groups or communities. The United Nations Global Counterterrorism Strategy, the Security Council Resolution 2178, provides tools for addressing the scourge of violent extremism, including the growing flow of thousands of foreign terrorist fighters. The duly adopted Sustainable Development Goals also echo the voices of people and critically include a goal of peace, justice, and strong institutions. Our objective must be to go beyond countering violent extremism to preventing it in the first place. On the basis of an emerging international consensus, I intend to present a comprehensive plan of action to prevent violent extremism early next year to the General Assembly. I hope that each and every member state who are participating in this would closely coordinate to share your experience and your vision, how we can work together to combat and fight this extremism. And we most welcome your suggestions. This plan, which is firmly based on the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy, will provide specific recommendations to member states on individual and collective actions to systematically address the drivers of violent extremism at every level. It will also put forward recommendations on how the UN system can support member states to prevent violent extremism through an all-of-UN approach covering the many dimensions of our work. Let me briefly highlight 5 keys to success. First, governments cannot do it alone. We need to engage all of society, religious leaders, women leaders, leaders in the arts, music, and sports. Second, we need to make a special effort to reach young people where they live, share ideas, and communicate. Social media is central. We need to offer a counterweight to the siren songs that promise adventure but deliver horror, and that promise a meaning but create more misery. Third, leaders must work harder to build truly accountable institutions. I continue to urge leaders to listen very carefully to the grievances and aspirations of their people and address them. Fourth, and fundamentally, we must be guided by the moral compass of our common values. Respect for international law and human rights is non-negotiable. Without it, we are lost. Fifth, and finally, let us not be ruled by fear or provoked by those who strive to exploit it. We have a major challenge before us, one that will not disappear overnight, but one that we can address concretely by forging societies of inclusion, ensuring lives of dignity, and pursuing this essential endeavor inspired at all times by the United Nations Charter and Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I thank you, and thank you for your commitment. Thank you very much.
Next, I would like to give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Haider al-Abadi, Prime Minister of the Republic of Iraq.
السيد الرئيس أوباما، السيد بان كيمون الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة، السادة قادة العالم وشعوبهم، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Peace may be upon you, and God, it has been over 1 year since ISIS controlled Iraq and what it has caused of tragedies and atrocities for civilians and belongings. During this day, there has been a universal alliance, and there are a lot of friends of states who stood with us, and we're thankful to whoever stood with us against this unified enemy, which is not only a threat to us but for the whole world. Today, it has been 1 year since I have been over this government that was the product of free elections. This development development that we have established last year, we need to get the profits from during this year and during this coming months, and we can do it by unifying our forces. In order to know our stance and our approach, we need first to remember where we have been during last year before forming this government, and what we inherited from a country that is living a crisis in which crisis was occupying more than 30% of the region, and our military forces was in a very dangerous position, and there was the oldest culture in the world that was threatened by the occupation of ISIS, which is by occupying Iraq. There were in the internal front, there was a lot of sectarian wars, and the government was very weak at that point. We had crisis that was financial and bureaucracy, heavy bureaucracy in the country, and a lot of unemployed people. We have worked hard in order to reunify our country against and rebuilding our forces and regaining our connection with the world, and building also the tribal communities and their leaders, including Anbar, Salahuddin, and Mosul, who are under threat of ISIS. A lot of the tribes' sons are fighting by the government military forces, and we are eradicating the roots of corruption in civil associations after we have recused a lot of officials in different governments, and we provided more than 80,000 personnel who are fighting Daesh with salaries, and also for fighting ISIS. And we also have cancelled what is more than 50,000 of what is called the elusive soldiers who were just receiving salaries without really doing any work. This way we got our budget rid of the burden. We're also getting rid of honor posts and reducing Iraq's dependence on oil income. And during this, we're trying to benefit from the reduction of the oil. We are trying to unify all the government and the community around it. And our government is seeking forming local fighters who are fighting together against terrorism, and because ISIS is threatening the whole area, we are working on reinforcing our connection or relationship, including Saudi Iran and Saudi Arabia and all the regions of the area generally. We're also making reforms in the area and in the diplomatic front, and we are acquiring
ودول صديقة
قمنا بتحرير
أمرلي وجرف الصخر وزمار وبيجي وجولاء والسعدية والضلوعية والدور والعلم والحجاج ومناطق أخرى كثيرة غيرها. وفي عملية تحرير تكريت قمنا بإشراك قوات الأمن العراقية والشرطة المحلية والشرطة الاتحادية والعشائر في تلك المنطقة والحج الشعبي ليقوموا بتحرير مواطنينا من طغيان الإرهابيين.
Community forces also, tens of thousands of Iraqi people are now back in Tikrit. About 80% who had slim before, slow before they came back after a lot of assistance who provided aid to Iraqi through directly or indirectly. Despite the
كانت ضئيلة جدا بالمقارنة مع حودة الحياة الطبيعية على نحو متزايد.
Retributions were low compared to the fears of them, where ISIS was committing different kinds of crimes against from tribes against the others. This way, there has been retribution and revenge cases, but it's been limited. That's why we consider it to be victory in all streets, but we still need the aid of the civil international community. Despite
ونزوح ملايين
what's going on of we have 3 million
وميزانية محدودة جدا
Iraqi who has been out of their places, and with the budget of Iraq compared to what have been, we cannot finance all these
وتحقيق النصر فيها
battles that we are seeking to win. We need your help and the help of the international community in financing and the equipment of our soldiers. We need your support in order to also take care of the people who lost their loved ones and the children. We need your help to also to drive where the radicals and the terrorists are stemming from, and their ideologies who are coming from all places in the world, and they're coming from the North America, they're coming from Islamic and Arabic countries too. We need to work with our neighboring countries to stop the foreign terrorist fighters who are killing civilians in Iraq and Saudi Arabia, and then go back to their countries where they come from after they have done a lot of terrorist actions. We want you to stop the terrorists from financing the money through international financial networks that are being used now to finance those terrorists. We are demanding to suspend it under the light of the resolution of the Council. We want you to help us stop them from enslaving women and men and stealing the artifacts, and because those people who have been, whose hearts have been filled with hatred, we need to adopt the treatment of the reasons of those problems, economic and political. We have started on doing that up till now, uprooting this basic reason that causes people to be directed towards radicalization and violence and terrorism. We have provided different kinds of sacrifices, and our people are still sacrificing their lives for this purpose. We need not to lose focus and not to lose time in enforcing our gathering our forces against ISIS, and do not forget that the time is a big element. Together you have stopped, and we have stopped the march of the terrorists. Together we will gain a victory that is not only the victory of the Iraqis, but it is a victory for all the representing countries in every country that has contributed with us in fighting the terrorism. Thank you, and for all that we have done and all that we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Abadi, for your statement and for the work you're doing under very challenging circumstances to address this issue in your country. I want to next give the floor to His Excellency Mr. Muhammadu Buhari, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Mr. Chairman, Your Excellencies,
سيد الرئيس أصحاب
ladies and gentlemen,
السيادة سيداتي
I thank
سادتي
President Obama for organizing this
شكرا
important
للرئيس
meeting.
أوباما على عقد هذا
The
الاجتماع
timing is
الهام.
appropriate and the subject matter warrants our close attention. The threats posed by ISIL in the Middle East and violent extremism elsewhere are an existential danger to many states. ISIL is a serious threat to international peace and security and should be treated as such. There can be no half measures of expedient solutions in dealing with terrorists and extremists. They respect no laws and have no regard to the sanctity of lives and property. They operate outside law and must be seen for what they are and dealt with appropriately. Given that the acceptance process for recruits into ranks of ISIL involves rigorous vetting and screening, as well as sponsorship known as tazkiyah, our expectation was that the demanding enlistment process, coupled with the legal framework instituted by the United Nations, would stem the tide of their flow. Apparently, this is not yet happening. Mr. Chairman.
It's the second time you've tried to leave when I've said you're on.
We're back.
You guys, I don't feel like you see enough of this face anymore. He's so busy. Like you're resting on my hand. Literally. There's Jeff.
Hello.
We were just kind of going over some fun Fox News Now stuff, and I did interrupt our video, but I'm going to bring you the conclusion at 6:30. That's an hour and a half away. Please return at 6:30 and spend your evening with FOX10 News Now. We had a jam-packed day of news between the Planned Parenthood protests, like they actually were happening all over the country, and the Senate. I thought Rand Paul's speech today was very interesting. Who knew about the cocaine in the pigeons? Did you hear that?
I missed that.
Yeah, we'll revisit when we shut the show down.
That was a good, and then the UN meetings.
Yes, absolutely. So we had a lot of news earlier in the day. I'll give you a wrap up at 6:30 and give you some of the highlights. Give you some of our local packages from the 5 and 6, some major national stories, a lot of interesting stuff coming out of Georgia happening today. So I will bring you that 6:30 to 9. But thank you so much for watching FOX10 News Now's afternoon edition. I'm Kinsey Schofield.
Mike Page.
That's my name again. Jeff Moriarty.
And I will see you back here in an hour and a half. Thank you, everyone.